Jordan wasted no time. By the next day, he had delivered the materials Sunan requested. Wasting no moment, Sunan directed the workers to move the supplies to the newly constructed temporary laboratory. Once everything was in place, he began preparations for crafting the first golem. The core material for a clay golem was, unsurprisingly, clay, a type of soil with minimal sand and high clay content. Its low permeability and excellent plasticity made it ideal for shaping and binding. To assemble a single clay golem, Sunan required approximately half a ton of clay, a small amount of silver and crystal, and most importantly, a soul core. For the simplest clay golems, gems could function as soul cores. However, this resulted in golems with minimal intelligence, capable of performing only basic tasks like cleaning, carrying loads, or simple combat. Having created countless clay golems in his previous life, Sunan quickly fell into a familiar rhythm. Within 30 minutes, a 2.5-meter-tall clay figure began to take form on the workbench. The golem had a rectangular face and a stout necklace torso. Its broad chest and muscular shoulders gave way to arms that extended down to its knees, with thick yet surprisingly agile fingers. Its legs, shorter in proportion to its body, ended in flat, sturdy feet designed for stability. The chest cavity of the golem remained open, revealing an intricate array of magical inscriptions. Carefully, Sunan placed an engraved gem into the cavity, sealed it shut, and began chanting the activation spell. ####, bringing the golem to life. The final step in golem creation was imbuing it with life through magic. As Sunan's spell resonated, the surrounding energy particles stirred and converged. Streams of elemental energy from the nearby earth vein node joined the flow, surging into the clay body. Under the infusion of energy, the lifeless clay began to transform. A peculiar vitality, a stark contrast to the essence of living beings, took root and grew within the golem. The process lasted over 10 minutes. Gradually, the magical energies calmed, leaving behind a charged and animate construct. With a sudden jolt, the clay golem moved. It sat up on the workbench, its expressionless face staring blankly at Sunan. "It's complete," Sunan said, his face breaking into a satisfied smile. He pointed to a nearby box. "Move that outside." "Yes, master," the golem responded in a deep, monotonous voice. It leaped from the workbench, its heavy frame landing with a solid thud. Though its initial movements were clumsy, it quickly adapted, hefting the box with ease and carrying it out of the lab. Sunan nodded in approval. Clay golems were incredibly practical laborers. They consumed minimal energy and could work continuously for 4 to 5 days on a full charge. When depleted, they could be quickly recharged via the earth vein node. "The materials are relatively inexpensive," Sunan mused. "Clay, a bit of silver, and some bronze and crystal, all for roughly 10 gold coins. Much cheaper and more efficient than hiring laborers." Resolved to expedite the base's construction, Sunan decided to craft 10 more clay golems over the next 2 days. He planned to leave the more complex iron golems for when the puppet factory was operational. ###rapid progress. The month of revival arrived, bringing with it melting snow and the first hints of spring. With 10 clay golems added to the workforce, the construction project surged ahead. Tasks that previously required multiple workers were now handled effortlessly by a single golem, leaving the laborers in awe. Kay visited several times to observe the progress. After watching the golems in action, his face lit up with excitement. "These things are perfect pack animals," he exclaimed, already envisioning a logistical revolution. Even when Sunan mentioned the 10 gold coin cost per golem, Kay remained undeterred. Compared to maintaining the Blackrock Cavalry Corps, these are far more economical. They could transform our logistics during battles. Unable to escape Kay's persistence, Sunan reluctantly agreed to supply golems for a pack animal corps once the base's construction needs were met. ###challenges of expansion. Meanwhile, Kay faced challenges expanding the Blackrock Cavalry Corps. The primary obstacle was the limited supply of lower-grade dragon blood potion. With only a handful of black-scale lizardfolk captives, the monthly production of potion fell short of the army's growing demands. Kay frequently sought Su Nan's counsel on the matter. Su Nan considered several solutions, including using the blood of the infiltrator dragon. However, he ultimately rejected the idea, as it would slow the dragon's bloodline enhancement, a critical factor in Su Nan's personal growth. My strength is vital, Su Nan reminded himself. The appearance of someone like Ho Chi proved how unprepared I am. I can't afford to slow my progress. Instead, Su Nan decided to find a substitute for the dragon blood potion, something inexpensive, mass-producible, and capable of supporting the army's expansion. After much thought, he turned his attention to magical plants. If no suitable plants exist, I'll cultivate them myself, Su Nan resolved. With the synthetic magic cube in his possession, he had an advantage over most wizard apprentices in developing new magical flora. When Kay heard of Su Nan's plan, he felt reassured. Take all the time you need, he said, placing his trust in his younger brother. #, training the next generation. Before leaving, Kay brought up another matter. You mentioned recruiting apprentices from the territory. What's your plan for that? This base will need trained personnel for maintenance, Su Nan explained. I intend to train them myself. If I find promising candidates, I'll even teach them wizardry. Kay's eyes gleamed. The rapid development of Blackstone City had proven how invaluable a wizard apprentice could be. Producing more wizards within the territory would be a monumental boon. Leave it to me, Kay promised, already planning how to find and recruit suitable candidates. The combined effects of the super ability potion and the divine blood crystal propelled Su Nan's meditation to unprecedented heights. By the middle of the month, he successfully constructed his 5th star ring, pushing his spiritual power to surpass the 18-mark barrier. 2 months passed, and with the super ability potion's duration nearing its end, Su Nan synthesized another second-rank, top-grade potion and consumed it. The improvement was immediate. His meditation efficiency surged even further. By the end of just 1 day, Su Nan's proficiency with the Star Ring meditation method increased by an astonishing 700 points. Leveling the Star Ring meditation method to level 6 requires 50,000 proficiency points, Su Nan calculated. At this rate, it'll still take 2 months. But constructing the 6-star ring should push my spiritual power past 20. He brought up his status panel to review his progress. Su Nan Arnest. Human male, 17 years old. Spiritual, 18.92. Physical, 14.21. Skills. Star Ring Meditation Method LV6, 21/50,000. Potion Making LV3, 1804/6000. Creature Modification LV2, 526/3000. Puppetry Refining LV2, 2371/3000. Magic Item Creation LV1, 251/1000. Among his skills, potion making showed the fastest growth. Su Nan's daily potion production, delivered to the Firefox Trading Company, remained his primary source of income. Puppetry refining was not far behind. The dozens of Blackrock beasts he refined monthly, along with the recent creation of 10 clay magic puppets, provided significant experience gains. Creature modification followed closely, fueled by his ongoing blood exchange experiments on the stealthy dragon. Through these experiments, the stealthy dragon's dragon-lizard bloodline concentration had reached nearly 40%. Su Nan estimated it would take another 2 years for it to evolve into a subdragon bloodline. The spatial teleportation experiment. Su Nan had once entertained the idea of replicating Amy's spatial teleportation ability onto the stealthy dragon. The combination of reality conversion, invisibility, and spatial teleportation would elevate the stealthy dragon's combat capabilities to a level where even legendary knights would struggle against its surprise attacks. Using frozen peppermint as bait, Su Nan persuaded Amy to cooperate in his experiments. However, despite his efforts, the results were disappointing. Amy's ability wasn't rooted in her bloodline, but was instead an awakened magical technique tied to the magical companion contract. Extracting and transferring this ability to the stealthy dragon proved impossible. It's not over, Sunan reassured himself. There are races in the multiverse with innate spatial teleportation abilities. Once I become a wizard, I'll capture one and extract its bloodline for replication. For now, though, the idea remained shelved. Magic item creation. Among Sunan's skills, magic item creation lagged behind. Beyond crafting rune gems, he had yet to create true magic items. Secondary magic stones should help with proficiency, he mused. These stones were essential for powering the magic energy crystal forging furnace, a crucial component for both the magic item workshop and puppet factory. Before he could forge the furnace, however, he needed a stockpile of magic stones. Forging secondary magic stones. Sunan entered his laboratory, which was now bustling with activity. Under the tireless efforts of his clay magic puppets, the base's foundation had been laid, and key facilities were taking shape. The construction would be complete within 2 months, at which point formations and magic energy transmission pipelines would finalize the project. Standing at his workbench, Sunan inscribed a formation and placed a crystal, roughly the size of an egg, at its center. Though called magic stones, these were actually gray crystals, also known as magic crystal stones. They serve as carriers for magic energy. Sunan began chanting. The formation glowed, drawing elemental magic from the earth vein node through transmission pipelines. The energy poured into the crystal, transforming its structure. After several minutes, the once transparent crystal turned gray, emitting a faint magical luster. Inspecting it with his magic cube, Sunan read, Secondary magic stone, purity 99.36%. A crystal containing a small amount of magic energy ***. Good purity, Sunan muttered, satisfied. He repeated the process, creating over 20 stones until the formation was exhausted. With the secondary magic stones in hand, Sunan synthesized a lower-grade magic stone, which finally appeared in the synthesis interface after adding the 15th secondary magic stone. Lower-grade magic stone, a crystal containing rich magic energy. Calculating costs, Sunan realized a single secondary magic stone cost roughly 12 silver coins, while a lower-grade magic stone cost under 2 gold coins to produce. In the 2.0 version of the Age of Wizards, lower-grade magic stones are worth 50 to 60 gold coins each. This is an absurd profit margin, Sunan thought, weighing the stone in his hand. Magic stones were invaluable to wizards, serving as currency, spellcasting materials, and energy sources for formations. With his low-cost synthesis method, Sunan envisioned himself amassing a fortune when the elemental tide returned. That is, if I survive long enough to see it, he reminded himself with a wry smile. Stockpiling resources. Sunan continued crafting, aiming to stockpile at least 300 magic stones, enough to power 2 magic energy crystal forging furnaces for extended periods. It's a shame my current spiritual power isn't enough to open an elemental channel, he lamented. If I could build an elemental pool, I wouldn't need so many magic stones. Elemental pools, capable of drawing unlimited energy from the elemental planes, were far superior to Earth vein nodes. Unfortunately, opening an elemental channel required the abilities of a full-fledged wizard, a goal still out of Sunan's reach. For now, he focused on grinding out magic stones, his resolve unwavering. Territory-wide recruitment. As Sunan immersed himself in his work, a unique recruitment campaign swept across Shining Light territory. This initiative, driven by Sunan's vision, sought to gather individuals with potential for specialized training, a step toward securing the future of the territory and its burgeoning magical infrastructure.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Bang! 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 The heavy wooden door was pounded with fierce force. Inside the wooden hut, a man, hiding under a tattered quilt and fast asleep, was jolted awake. He rubbed his eyes and mumbled in a sleepy voice, "Coming." It was still chilly in the middle of the revival month. After putting on his ragged clothes, a man grabbed the leather coat he used as a second quilt and pulled it on. Then, he opened the wooden door. Outside, old Roger leaned against the wagon, a leather whip in one hand and a tobacco pipe in the other, puffing away. "Hurry up, it's getting late. You'll be punished for being late." "I know." a man closed the door behind him, hopped onto the wagon with nimble movements, but his expression was calm. Roger glanced at him, said nothing, and whipped the horse with a sharp crack. The old horse let out a gruff groan, pulling the wagon slowly forward. a man leaned against the wagon railing, took a look at the dark sky, and closed his eyes to doze. Based on his past experience, it would take another half-hour to reach the inner castle. By the time they got there, the sky would be about to dawn. a man was an orphan. According to old Roger, he found a man on a snowy day. Since he had no children of his own, he took a man in and raised him. All these years, old Roger had been supporting them by collecting trash for the nobles and disposing of it outside the city. He had worked hard to raise a man to the age of 12. a man was full of gratitude for old Roger. Though he knew he and old Roger weren't related by blood, in his heart, old Roger was his father. Unbeknownst to them, the wagon had entered the inner city. Long-formed habits made a man wake up automatically. From afar, he saw the towering and majestic castle, and his eyes couldn't help but show a hint of envy and longing. That was where the lord and the knights lived. a man had dreamt countless times of becoming a noble, living in a luxurious castle, enjoying a life of lavishness and superiority, or becoming a powerful knight, earning the lord's favor and becoming his guard, gaining the privilege of living in the castle. In the boy's shallow understanding, that castle was the most beautiful place in the world, NOVLB //JNN. But deep down, he knew very well that unless his work required it, a peasant like him would never be able to set foot in that castle in his lifetime, let alone live in it. When he woke up, everything in his dreams would vanish, leaving only the cold reality behind. Old Roger had told him that when he died, a man would inherit the 2 wooden huts and the wagon, taking over the job of cleaning trash for the nobles. a man thought his future would be like that. The wagon stopped at the castle gate. a man hopped off after old Roger and walked towards the tall guards at the gate. In the past, when they entered the castle to dispose of trash, they would always be exploited by the guards at the gate and the stewards inside, demanding various favors. But since the previous lord was executed and the new lord moved into the lord's mansion, replacing a bunch of guards and stewards, they hadn't encountered any exploitation. Just this alone, a man felt a favorable impression towards the new lord he had never met. Over the past few months, the guards at the gate had become familiar with old Roger and a man. When they arrived, they were simply checked briefly before being allowed to pass. After spending the entire morning efficiently cleaning up the trash and loading it into the wagon, old Roger and a man were ready to transport the trash outside the city. As they were about to leave, one of the guards suddenly stopped a man, looked him up and down, and asked, "Little a man, how old are you?" a man was stunned for a moment, but he answered truthfully, 12 years old. "Can you read?" a man nodded. Peasants like him who worked for noble masters usually didn't know how to read. However, because old Roger had worked as an accounting apprentice for a shop when he was young, though the shop had gone bankrupt later, he had learned to read, and then he taught a man. Hearing a man's answer, the guard said with a smile, "That's perfect. The Lord issued a decree a while back. All teenagers in the territory who are 12 years old but not older than 15, who can read, regardless of gender or background, must go to the testing center for testing. You go there later." "Testing? What kind of testing?" a man was still confused, but old Roger panicked first and said hurriedly, "Sir, little a man has always been diligent in his work. He hasn't done anything wrong." The guard waved his hand and laughed. "Don't worry, it's a good thing. Lord Nan is recruiting apprentices for the entire Shining Light territory. Anyone who passes the testing will be able to become his apprentice. and each month they will receive a gold coin subsidy. Old Roger and Siaman were stunned, their eyes wide with shock. They worked hard all month and earned less than 10 silver coins. But if they became this apprentice, they could get a gold coin every month? Was there such a good thing? However, old Roger immediately felt hesitant. Were there really such pie-in-the-sky opportunities in the world? Wouldn't they be tricked away and then forced to do something bad? Seeing old Roger's expression, the guard knew what he was thinking and said with a laugh, "Lord Su Nan is a legendary wizard. The decree was issued by the Lord. Do you think those two gentlemen have nothing better to do than to trick you, a poor man? If I didn't see little Siaman being well-behaved, I wouldn't bother to remind you." Old Roger quickly apologized with a smile. Thinking about what the guard said, it made sense. The Lord's decree, how could it be fake? After thanking the guard, old Roger pulled Siaman onto the wagon. On the way back, old Roger thought for a while and said to Siaman, "When we get back after transporting the trash, you go home, wash up, change clothes, and then go to the testing center." Siaman nodded vigorously, his eyes shining. If he could become the apprentice of the Lord Su Nan that the guard mentioned, he would get a gold coin every month. Saving for a year or two, he could take old Roger to the inner city, open a small shop, and no longer have to get up early and work hard cleaning trash. Maybe he would even have the chance to live in that castle. Thinking about it, Siaman was extremely excited, wishing he could fly to the testing center right now. After returning from outside the city, Siaman ran home, washed up, changed into his best set of clothes, and then went straight to the place the guard mentioned. The testing center was located at the boundary between the outer city and the inner city. In front of the temporary wooden shed, hundreds of boys and girls around Siaman's age were lined up in a long queue. Many were excitedly chatting, occasionally looking ahead in the line. Siaman noticed that these people were all dressed decently. Even the worst had a clean set of clothes, unlike him, wearing a white, patched-up set of clothes. Thinking about it, it made sense. In this era, those who could read usually came from good families. People like him, outliers, were rare. Go to the end of the line and wait, don't wander around. A nearby soldier noticed Siaman and told him to join the line. Siaman followed orders, joining the end of the line, waiting quietly. Several boys in front of Siaman seemed to know each other and were chatting enthusiastically. Lord Sunan is the younger brother of the Lord. If you can become his apprentice, you will have a bright future. My cousin is a guard in the castle. He said that the knights all respect Lord Sunan. Even the Lord often asks for Sunan's opinion. You don't know this, Lord Sunan is a wizard. A legendary wizard? Really? Of course it's true. My father attended a nobleman's banquet and personally heard the nobleman say this. That's amazing. Wizard? Shimon rolled his eyes. When he heard the kind soldier mention the wizard before, he was a little confused. What exactly is a wizard? From the tone of these people, it seemed to be something very powerful. Unable to suppress his curiosity, Shimon finally couldn't help but interject. "Excuse me, what is a wizard?" The few people chatting turned to look at Shimon. Seeing that he was wearing old clothes, they flashed a look of disdain in their eyes. The leading boy sneered. "You don't even know this? A wizard is a great figure, even more powerful than a knight. They can control lightning and fire, and they know all sorts of amazing magic." Can control lightning and fire? Shimon was stunned. Are there actually people in this world who can do this? That's too amazing. Lord Sunan is such a powerful person. Seeing Shimon standing there in a daze, the boy who spoke to him contemptuously curled his lips and ignored him, turning his head to continue chatting with his companions. As time passed, the line slowly moved forward. After waiting for about an hour, Shimon finally reached the front, where he could clearly see the situation inside the wooden shed. There was a long wooden table inside, with an old man with kind eyes sitting behind it. Every time a boy or girl stepped forward, the old man would open a book and let them look at it. Most people would only look for about 10 seconds before showing a painful expression, covering their heads and groaning in pain. At this time, the old man would close the book, comfort them a few words, and let the testers leave. Obviously, these people were all unqualified. So far, there seemed to be very few qualified candidates. Only one boy and one girl. They were both about 12 or 13 years old, standing side by side behind the old man. The boy was dressed in a silk robe that looked very expensive, seemingly a noble child. He had a faint smile on his face, but despite trying his best to restrain himself, a hint of superiority was still evident in his eyes when he looked at other people his age. The girl's clothes were not as luxurious, but they were clean and elegant, and she had a strong, scholarly air about her. Shimon had once felt a similar aura from a scholar, and he guessed that the girl must have come from a family with a wealth of knowledge. While Shimon was observing, the few boys in front of him had already finished the test, and they were all eliminated without exception. The three of them left the line with dejected expressions, walking to the side, but they did not leave. They seemed to be unwilling to give up, wanting to see how others performed. Seeing that it was his turn, Shimon stepped forward to the long table. "Name?" the old man asked in a gentle tone. "Shimon." The old man glanced at Shimon's clothes, a slight surprise on his face. "Do you recognize characters?" "I've learned a little." Shimon rubbed his hands nervously. The old man smiled and reassured him. "Don't be nervous, relax." He then handed him a piece of paper. "Read the words on it." Shimon nodded, took the paper, and glanced at it. He found that they were all common characters, and he felt a little relieved. He cleared his throat and read the contents clearly. "That will do." The old man nodded in satisfaction, took back the paper, and pushed a book toward Shimon. It was a book with a cold, hard black cover. The open page showed a series of strange characters that looked like scribbles, making it impossible to understand their meaning. "Read this book. You may have some abnormal reactions during this process, such as headaches, chest tightness, etc. This is normal, don't worry. If it really hurts too much, then stop reading and look away." Shimon could no longer hear the old man's reminder. The moment his eyes fell on the book, he suddenly fell into a strange trance. The whole world seemed to become quiet in an instant. Everything around him, whether it was the scenery or the people, whether it was the birds flying in the sky or the leaves falling halfway from the branches nearby, all seemed to freeze in midair. Shimon looked around and was stunned to discover that the long table in front of him and the wooden pillars that supported the wooden shed inexplicably had many colorful tentacles growing on them. These tentacles were covered with countless eyes, like jellyfish swaying in the air. Looking down at the ground beneath his feet, the cracks in the bluestone bricks formed long cracks, and these cracks opened and closed as if they were a talking mouth, repeating a single word in unison: LB \JNN. Truth, truth, truth. Well, what is this? Shimon's face turned pale, and his body trembled slightly. He had never seen such a strange scene in his entire life. What's going on? Just when he was panicking, the bizarre tentacles and mouth suddenly disappeared. Shimon snapped back to his senses and was surprised to find that the world had returned to normal. Everyone around him was staring at him with wide eyes, filled with envy and jealousy. Shimon looked down at the book on the table and found that he could actually understand those scribbled characters. "Congratulations, you passed the test," the old man said with a smile, a bit of enthusiasm appearing on his face that was not there before. "Wait here for a while. After the test is over, I will take you to meet Lord Sunan." "No way. This guy got lucky, actually passed the test. This luck is too good. It shouldn't be. How could I be worse than a commoner?" The crowd was in an uproar, talking amongst themselves, especially the few boys who were in front of Shimon. Their eyes were filled with jealousy when they looked at him. Under the soldiers' shouts, the crowd gradually quieted down. Shimon was still immersed in the bizarre situation he had just experienced. He simply nodded woodenly in response to the old man's words, subconsciously standing at the back. "Are you okay?" A sweet voice reached his ears. Shimon looked up and met a pair of clear eyes. It was the girl with a scholarly air he had seen earlier. She said softly, "You saw those strange sights too, didn't you? Did you all see it?" Knowing that he wasn't the only one who had this experience, Shimon inexplicably felt relieved. He came back to his senses and then realized with surprise that he had passed the test. Doesn't that mean he'll be able to receive a gold coin subsidy every month from now on? That's great. A smile appeared on the girl's face as she looked at the overjoyed Shimon. My name is RTL Yuri. What about you? NOVLB //JNN. Shimon. Shimon turned to the other boy. The boy raised his chin slightly and said calmly, Corey McKinnon. Perhaps because Shimon was dressed in a poor man's clothes, Corey looked down on him. After introducing his name out of courtesy, he ignored Shimon. On the other hand, RTL smiled warmly at Shimon, showing no signs of superiority due to their difference in background. This is a gentle girl, Shimon thought to himself. The evaluation finally ended as the sky began to turn faintly yellow. The results surprised Shimon. In the end, only he, RTL, and Corey passed. Everyone else was eliminated. This gave Shimon a feeling that he was actually quite good. Follow me? The old man carefully wrapped the books in a thin cloth and tucked them into his arms. Then he turned and beckoned to the three of them. Led by the old man, the three entered the inner city and arrived at the front of the castle. The old man seemed to be of high status. The guards at the gate immediately bowed respectfully upon seeing him. Shimon then learned that the old man's name was Geiler, and he was a steward in the castle. The guard who had reminded Shimon earlier widened his eyes in surprise when he saw him. He obviously didn't expect Shimon to actually pass the evaluation. Shimon smiled gratefully at him and thought he would find an opportunity to properly thank the guard later. Master Sunan is a very kind person. He never beats or scolds servants. Don't be nervous when you see him later. Old Geiler comforted the three of them on the way. It didn't have much effect, though. The three of them were a little tense. Shimon didn't need to be told. The person he was about to meet was a great figure in his eyes. It would be strange if he wasn't nervous. Even RTL and Corey had been repeatedly instructed by their elders before coming here. They must be respectful to Master Sunan and absolutely could not displease him. After winding their way through courtyards and corridors, old Geiler finally led the three to a courtyard. The spacious courtyard was empty, except for a small cat basking lazily in the sun on the stone table in the middle. RTL's eyes lit up slightly. What a cute cat. Shimon and Corey couldn't help but take a few extra glances as well. But what happened next stunned the three of them. Old Geiler walked forward and bowed respectfully to the cat, saying respectfully, Master Amy, these three are the newly recruited apprentices. I have brought them to see Master Sunan. Meow. Sunan is meditating in the mind chamber, and it will be about half an hour before he finishes. You guys can wait here for a while. Amy licked the back of her paw and curiously observed the three of them. The three of them were already speechless. A talking cat? Were they dreaming? The three instinctively looked at old Geiler. He coughed lightly and said in a low voice, Master Amy is Master Sunan's well friend. Don't be disrespectful. Meow, come and sit down. Don't just stand there like fools. Amy raised her paw and beckoned to the three. Seeing this, the three exchanged glances and sat down at the stone table, forcing themselves to do so. Old Geiler then placed the books and a roll of parchment on the stone table, bowed to Amy, and left. In an instant, the courtyard was left with only the three of them and the cat. Meow, what are your names? Amy took the initiative to start the conversation, excitedly chatting with the three of them. Shimon was a little dazed. He had never dreamt that one day he would be sitting and chatting with a cat. Fortunately, the other party seemed very friendly, and the questions she asked were things like, what fun places are there in Shining Light City? And where can I buy delicious ice-congealed mint? Shimon couldn't keep up. He didn't even know what ice-congealed mint was. Corey and RTL, however, had more experience than him. They were able to answer many of the questions, making Shimon both envious and self-conscious. Half an hour passed quickly. There was a creak of a door opening from the depths of the corridor. Meow, Sunan is out. Shimon and the other three stood up reflexively, their faces tense as they looked towards the corridor. A figure quickly emerged from the corridor. To their surprise, they had imagined Master Sunan to be a young man in his 20s or 30s. But upon seeing him, they realized he was very young, looking like he was barely 20 years old. Master Sunan, the three of them didn't dare look at him for too long, and quickly bowed. Sunan nodded slightly, without speaking. He reached out, and the parchment on the stone table flew up in the air and landed in his palm. He unfolded it, and his expression shifted slightly. Corey McKinnon, the son of a baron. Artiel Yuri, the daughter of a scholar. Shimon, the adopted son of a commoner. The three of them represented the three classes of the Shining Light territory. A rather coincidental arrangement. After regaining the Shining Light territory, Kay had appointed 3 barons. Besides Brad and Jordan, there was a knight named Sterry McKinnon. This was the father of the boy named Corey. The parchment also detailed the entire process of the evaluation. The entire evaluation lasted 7 days. During that time, thousands of boys and girls who met the age and literacy requirements participated, but only a handful of them managed to pass the aptitude evaluation. Sunan wasn't surprised by the results. Even during the heyday of wizards 1,000 years ago, the number of people with wizard aptitude was extremely small compared to the vast population, less than 1 in 1,000. Let alone the fact that the concentration of energy particles had decreased significantly over the past 1,000 years. The number of people with wizard aptitude would only be even fewer. To be honest, finding 3 people with aptitude in the entire Shining Light territory was already beyond Sunan's expectations. He had originally thought that finding even 1 would be good enough. Of course, Sunan couldn't be sure how far these 3 would ultimately grow. Unless the 3 of them showed enough value, he wouldn't waste too many resources cultivating them. Thump! Sunan waved his hand, and 3 thick books appeared out of thin air, landing on the stone table. This scene left the 3 children speechless. This is the Star Ring meditation method. It is the key to becoming a wizard apprentice, and it is what you will be practicing for the next period of time. From today onwards, you will live here. If you have any needs in terms of food, clothing, housing, and transportation, you can speak to the servants. As long as it is reasonable, they will meet all your requirements. The only thing you need to do is to focus on practicing the Star Ring meditation method. Once you have mastered it, I will take you on as my students. Do you understand? Shimon, Corey, and Artiel were both surprised and delighted. They responded in unison. Apprentice and student are 2 completely different concepts. They could tell the difference. If they could become Master Sunan students, their futures would undoubtedly become even brighter. Sunan nodded in satisfaction and waved his hand for the 3 of them to leave. It wasn't easy to cultivate suitable assistants to help maintain the various facilities of the base. The first requirement was that these people must at least be wizard apprentices. Even a first-rank wizard apprentice who hadn't even managed to build the first star ring would do. Otherwise, if they couldn't even sense energy particles, a lot of work simply wouldn't be able to be carried out. Wizards are not a group that loves to spread knowledge. Many wizards are willing to cultivate apprentices out of necessity, either to cultivate their own forces to facilitate resource collection or to find themselves a group of competent assistants. While Sunan wanted both, he intended to start cultivating personnel step by step from now on. By the time the wizard era arrives 1,000 years later, he might have already established his own wizard power. And to achieve this, the first step is the most crucial, as well as the most difficult. Sunan was already mentally prepared for this. Time flew by, and it was now the month of thunder, April. The weather gradually became hot, and the heat in the air made people feel restless. However, Sunan was quite invigorated. This was because the base's fundamental construction was finally finished. The moment he received the news, he immediately rushed back to the base, ready to proceed with the final step, laying the magic energy transmission pipelines. If the ley line node is the heart of the base, then the magic energy transmission pipeline is the base's blood vessels. Only after laying down the complete magic energy transmission pipeline could the elemental magic from the ley line node be transported to all parts of the base without obstruction, allowing the base's various facilities to function properly. The materials used to make magic energy transmission pipelines were diverse. After careful consideration, Sunan decided to use crystals. Crystals were the cheapest, had the best performance, and were the easiest magic energy transmission materials to manufacture artificially. Magic energy transmission pipelines made with a large number of artificial magic energy crystals were also known as crystal scars. However, even though crystals were not expensive, the base's vast area meant that a lot of magic energy transmission pipelines needed to be laid, so the final cost was still not low. To date, Sunan had already invested over 10,000 gold coins in base construction. This was almost equivalent to Shining Light Territory's entire year's income. To make up for it, he had been frantically making potions and selling them to the Firefox Trading Company almost every day for the past 2 months. On top of that, the territory subsidized a portion, which finally allowed him to gather the funds. As a result, his potion-making skill was now just short of 1,000 proficiency points from reaching level 4. This is just the beginning. The subsequent construction of the magic plant garden will also cost a lot of money. Su Nan sighed inwardly. It wasn't difficult for a wizard to make money, but they spent it just as extravagantly, like water flowing through a river, melting one crystal after another, turning them into extremely fine threads, then using the master's hand to precisely control them, drawing lines on the ground, walls, and ceilings, accurate to the micron level. Su Nan worked tirelessly for 2 whole days before finally finishing the entire base's crystal scars. As for the huge crystal that served as the central energy core, he set it in the very center of the base, placing it in a separate room, named the energy core chamber. Start energizing. Standing in the center of the room, Su Nan extended his hand to touch the central energy core, chanting an incantation. A faint purple light emerged instantly from the surface of the giant crystal, immediately extending outward along the crystal veins. In Su Nan's perception, intense energy fluctuations were spreading out in all directions, with his current room as the center. Before long, the entire base was enveloped in the dense energy fluctuations. It's done! A happy smile spread across Su Nan's face. Now, the base was truly completed. Next, he just needed to perfect the details of each area. Su Nan took out the base's design blueprint from the magic cube and looked at the areas divided on it. Meditation area, magic training area, experiment area, living area, potion-making area, warehouse. Su Nan had even set aside a confinement area, located next to the experiment area, which he planned to use to imprison some experimental beasts in the future. If there were any enemies who came willingly, he could consider imprisoning them here too. These areas were all ordinary areas and were relatively easy to arrange. He could just borrow some manpower from Kay to take care of them. Only the magic plant garden, workshop, and puppet factory needed his personal attention. The 2 magic crystal forging furnaces have already been built. We just need to move them into the workshop and puppet factory. As for the magic plant garden, I need to quickly set up the energy gathering magic array and then start planting the first batch of magic plants. Su Nan had already decided what to plant for the first batch of magic plants. Silver Moonflower was a must. The raw material for his current super ability potion was the Silver Moonflower. This was the most indispensable material right now. N/O/vel/b//and.c//om. Moreover, if he were to train apprentices on a large scale in the future, he would definitely need a lot of Silver Moonflower to make lower-grade revitalization potions and revitalization potions. It was more cost-effective to plant them himself, instead of constantly purchasing them from the Firefox Trading Company. Furthermore, he could improve the Silver Moonflower, cultivate better varieties, and facilitate the production of higher-level potions in the future. For the second type of magic plant, Su Nan chose the red vein fruit. This was a relatively common magic plant, which could slightly enhance physical strength if consumed long-term. However, its effect could only be considered mediocre. If consumed consistently for a year or 2, it could increase physical strength by 1 to 2 points. It took a long time to take effect, and only had an impact on those below night level. Therefore, the red vein fruit was not expensive, even lower than the Silver Moonflower. Su Nan intended to fuse dragon's blood into the red vein fruit and see if he could cultivate a more powerful magic plant. Considering the planting and growth cycle of fruit, this would be a long process. However, with the magic cube, Su Nan was confident about success. For daily maintenance tasks, just let the clay golems handle them. Let's make 10 more clay golems, making a total of 20. That should be enough to handle the daily maintenance of the entire base. For guarding, we can use stone golems. In Sunan's plan, apart from the future apprentices he would train, the base would not have any other humans residing there. The daily maintenance and security of the entire base would be handled entirely by golems. It's a pity that there are no tower spirits to control them. Otherwise, the operation of the entire base could be automated. Tower spirits are the most advanced artificial intelligence. They are the managers of wizard towers, responsible for the integrated operation of the wizard tower, including functions such as integrated terminal computing, data recording, battle command, and experimental assistant. A single tower spirit would be more than enough to handle the automated operation of the entire base. Unfortunately, the lowest level tower spirit requires legendary soul crystals to be created. It's impossible to count on them at this stage. 50 stone golems, coupled with magic alarms, would be enough to make the base's defense impregnable. Over the past few months, Sunan had successively mastered 3 more first-ring spells. They were Weakening Ray, Burning Hand, and Magic Alarm. There was nothing much to say about the first 2 attack spells, but Magic Alarm was a very practical auxiliary spell. This spell's effect was to designate a specific area. When any unmarked creature enters or touches this area, it would trigger an alarm. The form of the alarm could be a mental signal or a sound. The former would only be transmitted silently to the caster or the creature specified by the caster. The latter would emit a sound audible to human ears, clearly heard by all creatures within the alert area. Sunan intended to set up a permanent magic alarm within the base. This way, with stone golems in the open and magic alarms in secret, the defense network would be complete. Even a legendary knight wouldn't be able to sneak into the base silently. It's best to create 1 more steel golem as the final guard of the base. With a legendary knight-level steel golem in place, the base's security will be even more foolproof. The Thunder Moon vanished like drifting wood chips in a river, swirling through fingertips and disappearing from sight. The weather began to grow hotter day by day. Not long after entering the Blossom Moon, Sunan successfully constructed his 6-star ring. As he had expected, his spiritual power attribute broke through the 20 threshold. Sunan harnessed human male. Spiritual 20.36/physique 15.45. Skills. Star Ring Meditation Method LV7. 21/80,000. Potion Brewing LV4. 256/10,000. Creature Modification LV2. 903/3000. Puppetry Refining LV2. 822/3000. Magical Item Crafting LV1. 502/1000. 80,000 Proficiency. It will take about 3 months to level up. Sunan nodded silently. One of the conditions for advancing to a 3rd-rank wizard apprentice was to construct 9-star rings. He still needed 3 more. At his current pace, it should take 2 or 3 years to complete if everything went smoothly. N/O/vel/B//and.C///OM. Then, all that would be left would be spiritual power. For spiritual power, I can use the Nightmare Potion to increase it. The key material, Bloodthirsty Mandrake, is already in hand. The rest of the materials are being collected by the Firefox Trading Company, so it's just a matter of time. During this period, Sunan had been diligently brewing potions, and his potion brewing skill had already reached level 4. With this level of potion brewing, he could attempt to brew second-order potions. It was worth mentioning that as the skill leveled up, the success rates for brewing lower-grade revitalization potions and lower-grade dragon blood potions had also increased, exceeding 40%. The increased success rate further reduced the cost of potions, boosting profits significantly and providing much-needed relief for Sunan, who was desperately short of money. The clay golems and stone golems have all been built. I won't need to spend much time refining golems anymore. Sunan had been working overtime to complete the base's requirements for 10 clay golems and 50 stone golems. In addition, he had created an extra 30 clay golems and given them to Kay to help build the supply unit. I have already placed orders with the Firefox Trading Company for silver moonflower seeds and red vein fruits. They will take some time to arrive. Sunan began to ponder his next arrangements. Aside from training and spell learning, he only had two things to do next. The first was to refine steel golems. One steel golem weighed over 10 tons and had to be made with at least the same amount of pure steel. The higher the quality of steel used, the stronger the resulting steel golem would be. Sunan planned to use black stone iron. Since black stone iron was lighter than the same volume of refined iron, the steel golems made from it would be relatively more agile. However, the warehouse had recently run out of black stone iron. He would have to wait until the new batch arrived from Blackstone City before he could start refining the steel golems. The second thing was to craft magical items. Sunan flipped his wrist, and a book appeared in his palm. The Complete Guide to Low-Level Magical Items. This book, left by Master Amy, included over 100 types of alchemical grade and gleaming grade magical items, a very comprehensive collection. Sunan had quite a few magical items on hand, but they were all alchemical grade. He wanted to craft a few gleaming grade magical items for himself, including a spatial, an offensive, and a protective one, at least one of each. However, crafting gleaming grade magical items was much more difficult than alchemical grade. With his current magical item crafting skill at only level 1, the success rate was likely abysmal. Magical item crafting is less than 500 proficiency away from leveling up. Let's practice by crafting some alchemical grade magical items first. I should update my brother's equipment. Sunan went to the workshop and took a long sword from a weapon rack. The weapon rack held over 100 weapons, densely packed with swords, spears, halberds, and more. They were all obtained by Sunan from K. He planned to use these weapons to try crafting enchanted weapons. Enchanted weapons could be considered a major category of alchemical-grade magical items. Their primary users were knights. Many wizards would create enchanted weapons for their knights to enhance their combat ability. Some wizards adept at crafting magical items could also use silver, gold, and other metals to temporarily imbue their knights' weapons with magical properties during battle. This was also called temporary enchantment. Sunan estimated that he would need to reach at least level 4 in magical item crafting before he could master this technique. Placing the long sword on the workbench, Sunan began preparing the materials. Common materials used in crafting magical items included various precious metals, gems, and magic stones. Depending on the magical properties of the item, sometimes specific materials were also needed. For example, crafting spatial magical items usually required star sand. Crafting staffs usually required mithril. Enchanted weapons were the simplest, only requiring base materials and no additional materials. As alchemical-grade magical items, the crafting difficulty of enchanted weapons was relatively lower than orthodox magical items. Under the bright lights, silver ingots, gems, and magic stones melted in Sunan's palm, turning into fine threads under his fingers. With a gentle touch of his fingertips on the sword's body, they slowly seeped into the sword, leaving behind strange patterns on the surface. A visible silver sheen gradually emerged from the blade. The entire process lasted over 10 minutes. As the last pattern was engraved, the silver thread snapped from Sunan's fingertips, the sword flashed, and it was imbued with an indescribable and strange aura. Not bad, my skills haven't gotten rusty. Sunan grinned, placing the sword in the magic cube. Enchanted weapon, alchemical grade / submagical item. Possesses black steel property, significantly increased hardness, not easily damaged, reduced martial energy attachment loss. Alchemical grade enchanted weapons typically had properties such as black steel, sharpness, and bloodlust. Better ones had weak elemental damage and martial energy gathering. The former added weak elemental damage to the weapon. The latter strengthened the power of martial energy. Generally, an enchanted weapon could only be imbued with one magical property. Only wizards with exceptionally refined crafting skills could imbue an enchanted weapon with multiple properties simultaneously. Of course, wizards at that level wouldn't waste their time on such a mundane task. Wouldn't it be better to craft a gleaming grade magical item instead? Besides these properties, enchanted weapons had a characteristic that wasn't exactly a property. Due to being infused with magic, enchanted weapons had a significantly improved compatibility with martial energy compared to ordinary weapons. This manifested as a significant reduction in the extra consumption of martial energy when attaching it. For this reason, even enchanted weapons that failed to imbue properties were still popular among knights. Come to think of it, can enchanted weapons with different properties be combined? A flash of insight struck Sunan. If it were possible, wouldn't it be possible to create an enchanted weapon with over a dozen properties? Thinking was doing. Sunan immediately tried it. Over the next period, he crafted over 20 more enchanted weapons. The success rate was decent, averaging 3 successes out of 5 attempts. Each success yielded about 20 proficiency points, and failures still gained around 7 or 8 points. After crafting more than 20 enchanted weapons, his magical item crafting skill successfully reached level 2. However, Sunan was disappointed to find that enchanted weapons with different properties could not be combined. It's true, enchanted weapons with different properties are essentially different items, so it's not strange that they can't be combined. Enchanted weapons with the same property could be combined. The combined enchanted weapons property effect would be further enhanced. For example, Sunan used 3 long swords with the sharpness property to combine into a long sword with the armor-piercing property, easily breaking through the defenses of fine armor with a single strike. Even though it didn't break through in rank and remained alchemical grade, this long sword's power was already comparable to orthodox magical items like the Bloodvine Ring and the Magic Coin. Since magical items with the same property can be combined, I could completely use alchemical-grade magical items to combine into gleaming-grade magical items, or even wizard tools. The materials for gleaming-grade magical items were mostly rare and hard to find. Wizard tool materials were even more difficult to obtain. In comparison, the materials for alchemical-grade magical items were much more common. If he could use alchemical-grade to combine into gleaming-grade, or even wizard tools, it would undoubtedly save him a lot of effort. Sunan's spirits rose, feeling like he had found another avenue to prosperity. Shining Light City, Inner Citadel. In the quiet meditation chamber, Shimon sat cross-legged on the floor, his eyes closed. In the invisible void, energy particles, like they were drawn by an invisible force, poured into his body and vanished. After half an hour, Shimon opened his eyes and let out a long sigh. He stood up, pushed open the door, and stepped outside. Looking at the lush greenery in the courtyard, a trace of bewilderment flashed across his face. Ever since he participated in the assessment, his life had undergone a drastic change. The dream he had fantasized about for over a decade had come true overnight. He moved into the castle he had always longed for, enjoyed the service of servants like a noble, and received a gold coin every month. During this time, Shimon returned home once. Old Roger told him that after he moved into the castle, many people came to inquire about him and sent many gifts to curry favor with Old Roger. When mentioning this, Old Roger grinned from ear to ear, praising Shimon for his success. Seeing Old Roger's joy and relief, Shimon was also very happy. But what made him happiest and most surprised was Lord Sunan, or should he call him teacher now, and the knowledge he taught him. A magical knowledge called meditation. After successfully mastering the Star Ring meditation method in 25 days, Shimon felt the energy particles for the first time. Ever since then, he felt like he had entered a whole new world. With just 2 months of meditation, he transformed from a skinny child into a sturdy young man. His thin body, where even his ribs were clearly visible, had become robust almost overnight. According to Miss Amy, he already possessed the physical fitness of a sword-wielding attendant. The blacksmith, Carlo, from the Fire Hammer blacksmith shop in the northern part of the city, often bragged in front of him about his past as a sword-wielding attendant. If Carlo knew that a 12-year-old boy like him already possessed the strength of a sword-wielding attendant, would he be so shocked that his jaw would drop? Shimon suddenly wanted to see that sight, but he was just thinking about it. He didn't have the time for that now. After mastering the Star Ring meditation method, his teacher officially took him as a student. Afterward, he was given a pile of books, instructed to study diligently, and told that he would be tested on his progress every month. If his teacher was satisfied, he would be rewarded. To be honest, the content of those books was very complicated and unheard of. Things like Introduction to Magic Plants, Magic Plant Cultivation, Introduction to Potionology, Biology, Mutation, Principles of Magic, Origin of Wizards, all these made Shimon's head spin. Although he could read, his ability was limited to everyday literacy. Digesting these massive tomes was a real challenge for him. To keep up with the progress, he had to sneak off and ask Miss Amy for help. The price was that he had to massage Miss Amy for half an hour every day. Shimon's thoughts were running wild when the door to the nearby room suddenly opened. Atur walked out. Seeing Shimon, Atur smiled gently and said, "Just finished meditation?" "Yeah." Shimon glanced at the book in Atur's hand and nervously pursed his lips. Today was the monthly assessment. Soon, his teacher would come to assess their progress this month. Whenever this time came, he would involuntarily feel nervous. Seeing Shimon's unease, Atur softly comforted him. "Don't be nervous. You've been studying diligently, you'll be fine." Others might not know, but Atur knew how hard Shimon was working. She and Kore would sometimes take a break from their studies because they found them tedious. But she had never seen Shimon rest. Whenever she saw Shimon, he was diligently studying with his books. This focused and relentless attitude earned Atur's silent admiration. Shimon might not be as efficient as her and Kore in learning, but his progress might not be behind theirs. "Thank you." Shimon nodded gratefully to Atur. Just then, the door to the other side of the corridor opened, and Kore came out. Seeing Atur and Shimon standing in the corridor, he paused, his eyes scanning Shimon for a moment, his brow furrowed slightly. He then nodded to Atur, said nothing, and walked towards the courtyard gate. Seeing this, Shimon couldn't help but chuckle wryly. Kore had always looked down on his commoner status, and ever since Shimon mastered the Star Ring meditation method 2 days before Kore, it seemed like Kore had become even more displeased with him. As if his competitive spirit had been ignited, Kore always acted as if he wanted to compete with Shimon whenever their teacher assessed their knowledge. This made Shimon laugh and cry at the same time. "Don't mind him. Kore is actually not bad. He just has a strong competitive spirit," Atur whispered. Shimon nodded in understanding. He had seen many aristocratic young masters with far worse character. Compared to them, Kore was already quite good. At least Kore wouldn't insult him to his face by calling him a bastard or a peasant. Seeing that it was getting late, Atur and Shimon also went to stand at the courtyard gate, preparing to greet their teacher. Soon, the sound of footsteps came from afar, getting closer. Quickly, Sunan's figure appeared in their sight. "Teacher!" Shimon, Kore, and Atur all bowed respectfully. Sunan's spiritual power spread out, sweeping over the three of them. He nodded slightly, almost imperceptibly. "It seems that the three of you have been diligently meditating lately." "Very good." Shimon and the others were all delighted to be praised by Sunan. "Meow, Sunan's here." Amy suddenly popped out from somewhere, landing on Sunan's shoulder. The bells around her neck jingled gently, emitting a clear and pleasant sound. Shimon and the others watched this scene with calm faces. When they first saw Amy's spatial teleportation ability, they were amazed, but after seeing it so many times, they became accustomed to it. However, another being had them completely baffled to this day. Just as they were thinking about it, a massive figure silently and abruptly appeared before them, its black and red scales and sharp claws shining with a cold, chilling brilliance under the sunlight. That primitive and savage aura made Shimon and the others instinctively tense their bodies. By the truth, they had never seen such a terrifying beast before. When they saw the infiltrator's true form for the first time, they almost collapsed to the ground in fright. The infiltrator ignored the three youngsters, let out a low growl, and approached Sunan. Sunan stroked the infiltrator's rough head and said with a smile, "Been out to the base outside the city again?" Infiltrator, hiss. "Amy, meow. I'm not afraid of going out alone. I just wanted to go with you, because you were bored here." Infiltrator, hiss. "Amy, what's so good about sleeping? You're not a real dragon. Why do you always lie in your lair?" Sunan chuckled and interrupted the cat and the lizard's bickering. The base outside the city is already built. I've left a place for you there. It's much more spacious. You can move there to live. Hearing this, the infiltrator didn't have any objections. Amy looked at Xiaomon and the others. Meow. What about these three? Sunan glanced at his three students and said, they can move into the base once they have learned all the knowledge I require of them. After hesitating for a moment, Amy shook her head. Meow. I'll stay here for now. Sunan looked deeply at Amy, nodded, and said nothing more. After waking up from her 1,000-year sleep, Amy had lost all her family and friends. In this world, she was practically alone. Besides Sunan and the infiltrator, only these three new wizard apprentices could be considered in her circle, with whom she could communicate. Thus, in the case where Sunan was busy and often disappeared, Amy preferred to stay with these three. In the study, Sunan put down the book in his hand and nodded slightly. Not bad. All three of you have passed. As soon as these words were spoken, Xiaoman, Corey, and Attire, who were standing in front of the desk, all breathed a sigh of relief. This is your reward. Sunan waved his hand, and 3 bottles of lower-grade revitalization potion floated in front of the three. This is lower-grade revitalization potion. It can increase your spiritual activity, improve your meditation efficiency, and learning ability. 1 bottle can last for a month. Xiaoman and the others were overjoyed when they heard this, their eyes gleaming as they looked at the potion in their hands. According to the descriptions in the books, real wizard potions, even if they were only zero-order potions, had powerful effects beyond ordinary people's imagination. Not to mention a potion that enhanced meditation efficiency, which was also very precious to wizard apprentices. Keep working hard. If you can pass the knowledge exam next month, there will be more rewards. After encouraging them, Sunan waved his hand and let the three leave. The learning progress of these 3 little guys is pretty good, especially Xiaoman. I originally thought that because of his background, his learning ability would be weaker than the other 2, but he hasn't fallen behind at all. It seems that the little guy is worth cultivating. A hint of a smile appeared on Sunan's face. At this rate, in about half a year, the 3 little guys should be able to take on some of the base's work. Leaving the courtyard, Sunan went straight to the training ground. As expected, Kay was training on the training ground. Brett and Jordan were also there. Out of consideration for stabilizing his strength, and because the lower-grade dragon blood potion needed to be supplied to the Black Rock Cavalry Regiment, Kay hadn't asked Sunan to make dragon blood potion for him in the past half year. Therefore, he was still a junior great knight, and there was no sign of him breaking through yet. However, a junior great knight at the age of 21 was considered quite outstanding in any country. Breton and Jordan had each taken a dragon blood potion. The former had already shown signs of breaking through to becoming a great knight. The latter had just broken through to become a peak knight 3 months ago. Noticing Sunan's arrival, Kay immediately stopped training, took a towel from a servant and wiped his sweat, and smiled. Why are you free today? I have something for you. Kay's eyes lit up instantly, and he immediately asked, what is it? NOVLB //JNN. Brett and Jordan also looked curious. After all, every time Sunan took something out, it was a treasure beyond their imagination. This time was probably no exception. Under everyone's expectant gaze, a long sword appeared out of thin air in Sunan's hand. The silver-bright blade shone brightly in the sunlight, and the mysterious patterns on the surface of the blade shimmered with an exceptionally dazzling luster. This is a magical weapon. Sunan came to a steelman target and swung the sword down. Everyone felt a flash of fire in front of their eyes, and the next second they heard a hissing sound. The steelman target had been cut in half diagonally from the shoulder to the waist, the upper part falling to the ground with a bang. Kay took a sharp breath. As someone who had been using swords for years, he could naturally see how good the sword in Sunan's hand was. That steelman target was forged from blackstone iron, or extremely hard. Ordinary knives and swords could only leave a white mark on it when they cut it. But under the swing of that long sword, it was as fragile as tofu. This shows how incredibly sharp it was. And under normal circumstances, with the sharpness of this sword, the cut would definitely be smooth and flat. But in reality, the cut was uneven, with faint signs of melting. It was clear that the long sword had effects similar to fire damage. This sword has solidified the armor-breaking and weak fire element damage properties. In addition to being much sharper than ordinary weapons, it will also deal weak fire element damage when attacking, Sunan explained as he retracted the long sword. This was the finished product he had made after he solidified the weak fire element damage on the magic weapon that had solidified the armor-breaking property. He had failed 3 times before he finally succeeded. It was also the best magical weapon he had made so far. This was still because magical item manufacturing had reached level 2. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have succeeded. Currently, solidifying 2 properties at the same time was the limit of what Sunan could do. To do more, he would have to wait until magical item manufacturing reached a higher level. However, even so, Kay was already infatuated with this sword. While he was excitedly stroking the sword, he couldn't help but secretly marvel. As expected of Sunan, he could always bring him huge surprises. The extent to which this weapon enhanced a knight's combat power was self-evident. With this sword in hand, he even had the confidence to fight a middle-level great knight. On the side, Brett and Jordan stared enviously at the weapon in Kay's hand. Seeing this, Sunan threw them each a magical weapon. Brett's was a shield that solidified black steel and energy accumulation extremely hard and could also enhance the power of martial energy. Jordan's was a long sword that solidified sharpness and weak fire element damage. After receiving their magical weapons, Brett and Jordan were immediately overjoyed and thanked Sunan repeatedly. "Can this kind of weapon be mass-produced?" Kay asked excitedly. Sunan shook his head slightly. "Not the kind you have. However, slightly inferior ones, magical weapons that only solidify one property, can barely be mass-produced." "What about the cost?" Kay asked immediately. He was most sensitive to this right now. Shining Light territory needed to expand its military equipment while also supporting Sunan in building the base, and the economic pressure was still immense. "About 20 gold coins each," Sunan said. This was because the magic stones were synthesized by him, and the cost was extremely low. Otherwise, according to the market value, if there was one, the cost of a magical weapon would be at least 80 gold coins. Kay breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. All right, 20 gold coins wasn't too much. An ordinary fine steel long sword cost 3 or 4 gold coins, and magical weapons were much stronger than ordinary weapons, so it was reasonable for the price to be a few times higher. That being said, to equip all the knights in the territory with a magical weapon would still cost at least several thousand gold coins, another huge expenditure. Kay looked at the weapon in his hand and began to think about whether he could open up a new trade route using it. Seeing his change in expression, Sunan immediately guessed his intentions and poured cold water on him. "Forget about selling it outside. I don't have that much time to spend making magical weapons." Kay was a little disappointed, but he also understood what Sunan meant. It would be too much of a waste to have a wizard apprentice act as a blacksmith. After thinking for a while, he decided to equip the knights in the territory with a magical weapon each. Sunan nodded in agreement and gave Kay the magical weapons he had made during this period, including the failed ones, for him to distribute. With everything settled, Sunan was about to leave when he saw Kay's secretary rushing into the training ground, handing Kay a scroll of parchment. The latter opened it, and his brow furrowed immediately. "What happened?" Sunan stopped and asked. Kay took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "There is a plague outbreak in Frost Province." The Starbright Duchy had a total of 7 provinces. Among them, the Golden Rock Province was located in the northernmost part of the duchy, bordering the Lake Lawn Province to the southwest, and beyond that was the Frost Eye Province. "What disease?" Sunan asked. Kay didn't elaborate and handed him a piece of parchment. Sunan took it, and his brows furrowed. Apparently, a month ago, a strange disease suddenly appeared in Silver Ridge City, Frost Eye Province. People who fell ill would gradually grow beast-like hair, claws, and fangs, as well as other animalistic features. They would attack others like maniacs exhibiting an extremely strong desire for flesh. The Silver Ridge City Lord didn't take it seriously at first. He sent guards to kill the sick, burying them hastily. But the situation didn't end there. More people in the city were subsequently infected with the disease. In just a month, the number of infected people in Silver Ridge City had surpassed 500, and it was still increasing at an alarming rate. The situation had reached such a point that the Silver Ridge City Army was unable to handle it. With no other choice, the Silver Ridge City Lord had to seek help from the Frost Eye Marquis. Currently, the Frost Eye Marquis had sent troops to suppress those infected maniacs. After reading the content on the parchment, Sunan couldn't help but grin, feeling a toothache. Wasn't this just the beast transformation disease? It was more accurate to say that the beast transformation disease was an atavistic phenomenon rather than a disease. In humans infected with the beast transformation disease, the beast transformation factor would be completely activated. Their bodies would exhibit various beastly features, making them lose their sanity and transform into bloodthirsty, ferocious beasts. However, the only ones capable of spreading the beast transformation disease were the primitive beast transformants. Primitive beast transformants referred to the first generation of beast transformants, as well as the next generation born from primitive beast transformants. Beast transformants born from the breeding of a primitive beast transformant and a normal human or an ordinary beast transformant wouldn't be considered primitive beast transformants. For example, the beast transformant guard Oda beside Mujwa of the Firefox Trading Company was clearly an ordinary beast transformant. In ancient times, the primitive beast transformants had caused a catastrophe known as the Beast Transformation Calamity, resulting in massive casualties. It wasn't until later that wizards managed to suppress them. After that, wizards realized the threat posed by primitive beast transformants, so they eradicated them all. The ones that survived were the ordinary beast transformants born from breeding with normal humans. So, in theory, there shouldn't be any primitive beast transformants left on the Starlight Continent. How could the beast transformation disease appear again? Sunan secretly felt puzzled. This is the beast transformation disease. Sunan handed back the parchment. Seeing Kay's puzzled expression, he had to explain in detail what the beast transformation disease was. After listening, Kay's expression immediately became extremely solemn. The infected people who become beast transformants, are they hard to deal with? It depends on the infected person's physique. If it's just an ordinary person after infection, they would at most become probationary knight level. But if it's a probationary knight or knight, then it would be very troublesome. The beast transformation disease can be mild or severe. If we can find the source of infection quickly and curb the spread, then we can quickly quell the situation by eliminating all infected people. But if we can't control it, it could lead to a major disaster. Sunan shook his head. Kay's brows furrowed even tighter, and he sighed. I hope Frost Eye Province can control the situation as soon as possible. Sunan pursed his lips and didn't seem too worried. The Frost Eye Province was separated from the Shining Light territory by the Lake Lawn Province. Even if a beast transformation calamity truly broke out in the Frost Eye Province, the Frost Eye Marquis and the nearby provincial marquises would be the ones to worry, not him. Time flew by, and it was soon the month of Summer Ridge. The Firefox Trading Company finally delivered the Silver Moon Flower and Red Vein Fruit seeds. The construction of the magical plant garden could finally be put on the agenda. However, before planting, Sunan still had to improve the seeds of the Silver Moon Flower and the Red Vein Fruit. The former was relatively simple, just 2 words: synthesis. Use basic Silver Moon Flower seeds to synthesize a more superior variety. Of course, synthesis wasn't unlimited. Theoretically, as long as he had enough Silver Moon Flower seeds, Sunan could continue improving and advancing them. The problem was that the more superior the variety, the more demanding the growth environment would become. If the synthesized Silver Moon Flower was too superior, then even with the magic plant garden equipped with energy-gathering arrays, the energy particle density might not meet its growth conditions. Therefore, what Sunan needed to do was to find the limit-improved seeds that were just right for the energy particle density of the magic plant garden. This process wasn't difficult, just planting different synthesized seeds, comparing their growth performance and selecting the best ones. It took about 2 months before Su Nen finally selected the most suitable superior variety. The improvement process of the red vein fruit was much more difficult and long-lasting. He had to first fuse the red vein fruit seeds with dragon's blood, grow them for a round to obtain improved red vein fruit seeds, and then he could perform synthesis. Otherwise, if he fused each seed individually, Su Nen would be exhausted to death. However, even with the energy-gathering array improving the growth environment, the red vein fruit's growth cycle was still as long as 3 months. Adding the time spent on researching the fusion, it took Su Nen 4 months to harvest the first batch of seeds. He named them dragon blood fruit. Then, the process of selecting and adapting the seeds was repeated, just like with the silver moonflower seeds. By the time Su Nen planted the finally selected dragon blood fruit seeds, the time had entered the month of autumn curtain, nearing the end of the year. The weather had already become cold. Fortunately, the magic plant garden had a constant temperature array, so he didn't have to worry about the effects of climate. Looking at the dense seedlings of silver moon flowers and dragon blood fruit in the magic plant garden, Su Nen let out a sigh of relief, feeling quite a sense of accomplishment. From now on, he wouldn't have to spend a lot of gold coins buying silver moon flowers anymore. The material problem for super ability potions had temporarily been solved. The substitute for the secondary dragon blood potion was the same NOV-LB //JNN. Once the first batch of dragon blood fruit was harvested, the problem of insufficient potion supply could be solved. Stretching, Su Nen turned and left the magic plant garden. The base was quiet. Because he was the only one there, it was usually very quiet. Occasionally, he could hear the dull footsteps of the clay golems. They were cleaning the base. Since Xiaman and the other 3 couldn't yet handle things on their own, Su Nen was completely responsible for the planting and cultivation of the silver moonflower. As a result, he had become busier these past few months. Therefore, the steel golem hadn't been forged yet. The blackstone iron delivered from Shining Light City was still piled up in the warehouse. However, Su Nen hadn't neglected his meditation and spell practice for a single day. He had now successfully constructed his 7-star ring, getting 1 step closer to becoming a 3rd-rank wizard apprentice. His spiritual power had also increased to 22.12. However, the proficiency of the 8th-rank star ring meditation method had also skyrocketed to 130,000 points. He still needed more than 20,000 proficiency points to upgrade and break through again. More than 20,000 proficiency points, it's about a month's worth. But according to this trend, the proficiency of the 9th-rank star ring meditation method will probably reach 200,000. In that case, it will take at least 7 or 8 months to upgrade. Su Nen estimated that the time was roughly in line with his previous prediction. If all went well, he would be able to construct the 9th-star ring at the end of the month of Summer Ridge or the beginning of the month of Flaming Fire next year. The puppet factory echoed with a low rumble. The massive mana crystal forging furnace vibrated violently, with an intense orange-red glow radiating from the gaps in its tightly closed lid. The entire factory was filled with an anxious atmosphere, the scorching heat making even probationary knights unable to withstand it for long. Su Nen, however, was oblivious, his face calm as he stood before the workbench. A completed steel golem body lay on the wide workbench. The black metal surface was covered with countless magic inscription patterns. As Su Nen placed the soul crystal in the golem's chest cavity, a silver glow quickly spread along the inscription patterns, flowing throughout the entire body like a stream of light. The next second, the steel golem abruptly sat up, jumped off the workbench, landing with a thud on the ground, standing upright before Su Nen. Observing the majestic body of the steel golem, Su Nen nodded in satisfaction. A steel golem made with blackstone iron is indeed stronger than ordinary steel. Even against Ho Chi, this steel golem is enough to win. A qualified steel golem, in addition to being indestructible and possessing immense strength, also possessed dark vision, immunity to all mental influence effects, immunity to poison, sleep, paralysis, confusion, suffocation, and so on, fearless of pain and death. It also had extremely high resistance to most elemental damage effects. For example, burns from fire, paralysis from lightning, curses from darkness, and corrosion from shadows. It was undoubtedly a combat behemoth. Even within the wizard towers of official wizards, steel golems could be ranked among the high-level guard ranks. For Su Nan's current base, which was only just starting to take shape, it was more than enough to serve as the ultimate guard rank. As for higher-level golems, aside from the lack of suitable soul crystals, his current puppetry refining level was insufficient. Steel golems are indeed good guards, but the key materials are hard to find. In addition to the metal materials that make up the body, steel golems also require silver, gold, and crystal for inscribing magic patterns. The overall cost was close to 800 gold coins. This was without factoring in the value of the soul crystal. If the soul crystal were included, the cost of the steel golem would definitely exceed 1,000 gold coins. I don't have a second soul crystal on hand now, so I can't forge a second steel golem in the short term. Or maybe I could try using gemstones as the soul core, forging a lower performance castrated version of the steel golem, and then synthesizing it. Su Nan's eyes lit up. If this worked, he could forge steel golems even without soul crystals. However, doing so would consume a considerable amount of blackstone iron. Or could I use a gemstone-made soul core to synthesize and see if it can replace the soul crystal? n/o/vel/b//and.c//om. Whatever the case, it's worth a try. I'll add it to the schedule list for now. Su Nan casually added this plan to his schedule list. The list contained his daily schedule: meditation, potion crafting, forging blackrock beasts and golems, cultivating magic plants, blood exchange for the stealthy dragon, crafting enchanted weapons. Almost every day was packed. Thankfully, wizards could use meditation as a substitute for rest and didn't need to sleep. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to handle it all. Thankfully, the three little guys have learned enough. I'll arrange for them to move into the base in a few days. Then, I can leave the simple tasks like cultivating magic plants and extracting silver moon flowers to them, and I can free up time to create magical items. Due to his busy schedule, the plan to create Starlight-level magic items hadn't even been put on the agenda yet. Speaking of which, the materials I commissioned the Firefox Trading Company to procure should be arriving soon. It's worth mentioning that the schedule list didn't include spell learning because, in the past 6 months, Su Nan had already mastered all the first ring spells he could learn. These included Magic Disguise, 7-Colored Aura, Feather Fall, Level 1 Summoning Technique, Silent Shadow, and Understanding Language. So far, he had mastered 12 first-ring spells in total. For a second-rank wizard apprentice who had only advanced for less than 2 years, this number of spells was astounding. However, after that, Su Nan didn't have any more first-ring spells on hand. The Firefox Trading Company, although it had been collecting various books for him according to his commission, had very few spell books, and the occasional ones were mostly zero-ring spells. Over half of the first-ring spells that Su Nan currently mastered came from the spell books left by his master Amy. It seems that making a fortune still depends on wizard legacies. Su Nan thought of the Starsea Tower, one of the 3 great wizard legacies on the Starlight Continent. He wondered where the Starsea Tower actually was. Speaking of which, both the Starsea Tower and the Star Kingdom have the word star in their names. Could there be a connection between the two? After pondering for a while without any result, Su Nan shook his head, no longer dwelling on it. Instead, he started thinking about another matter. The base is too big. Even with 3 apprentices joining, there's still a shortage of manpower in many places. I need to find more help. Su Nan already had a solution to this problem. It was related to 2 first-ring spells he had recently mastered. Those were the Level 1 Summoning Technique and Understanding Language. The Level 1 Summoning Technique was also known as the Level 1 Summoning Help Technique among wizards. Many wizards would use this spell to summon interdimensional creatures to assist them with experiments, base management, and so on. After all, summoning interdimensional creatures was undoubtedly quicker and more convenient than spending a lot of time and effort training apprentices. However, this method wasn't without its difficulties. Firstly, The target of the level 1 summoning technique was uncertain. Interdimensional creatures were as numerous as stars, and 9 out of 10 could not meet the requirements of wizards. To summon a suitable interdimensional creature, it was almost impossible without trying hundreds or even thousands of times. Secondly, there was the issue of language communication. During the spell's activation, the caster could communicate with the summoned creature through the spell using mental communication, so there was no communication problem. However, if the interdimensional creature was to be kept, communication became an issue that had to be addressed. But this was easy to solve. Understanding language was designed for this very purpose. With this spell, communication with interdimensional creatures wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, he could later create a magic item with a permanent understanding language spell and put it on the summoned creature, eliminating any communication barriers. Finally, there was the matter of contracts. The prerequisite for turning an interdimensional creature into a helper was to ensure that it wouldn't betray. Furthermore, there was loyalty. Therefore, signing a contract was the only option. Even if it wasn't a slave-type blood contract, it had to be at least a cooperative oath contract. How to convince the interdimensional creature to sign a contract was something wizards had to consider. Of course, if you were ruthless enough, you could force the interdimensional creature to sign a blood contract using violence. There were even wizards who used this spell to summon interdimensional creatures as experimental material, leading to the level 1 summoning technique gaining another name, the level 1 summoning resource technique. However, the downside of doing so was obvious. Under the influence of the interdimensional summoning laws, these wizards would likely not receive a response from interdimensional creatures in the future. I also have magic coins, which can also summon interdimensional creatures. I can use them together with the level 1 summoning technique. Hopefully, I can summon some useful helpers. Sunan added another item to his schedule list. Shining Light City, Tavern Backyard. Shouts rose and fell, creating a chaotic cacophony. Be quick. Unload everything. Be careful. If you break anything, I'll deduct your pay. Separate the marked items, and I'll personally send them out of the city. Mujwa loudly directed his subordinates, occasionally throwing in a curse. Normally, with his status, he wouldn't need to personally accompany the convoy to deliver goods. But to show his respect for Shining Light territory, he would personally lead the way every time. Remembering his first encounter with Su Nan at the tavern, Mujwa couldn't help but sigh. Although he had initially recognized Su Nan as someone extraordinary with a promising future, he never imagined the other party's performance would be so astonishing and impressive. As one of the major merchants of the Thornflower Kingdom, he had his own intelligence channels and knew well how crucial Su Nan's role was in the recent battle to reclaim Shining Light territory. It could be said that without Su Nan, Blackstone City wouldn't have been able to make a comeback. Instead, it would have crumbled during the assassination attempt. Su Nan had almost single-handedly reversed the power dynamic between the two sides. Although Mujwa had heard countless rumors about the secrets of wizard apprentices, he had never witnessed firsthand how powerful they truly were. Naturally, he wanted to befriend such a promising individual. Not to mention, Su Nan also had a partnership with the Merchant Guild. Those potions brought the guild a significant profit. After unloading the goods, Mujwa entrusted the remaining tasks to his deputy, while he personally led people and cargo towards the base outside the city. Oda followed Mujwa closely, and they rode in the same carriage. After getting into the carriage and lowering the curtain, Mujwa casually asked, "Any news from the dying Frost Province?" Oda shook his head with a heavy expression. "No, I sent several letters, but the clan members there have not replied. Strange. The Beastmen in Dying Frost Province live perfectly normal lives. Why would they spread the Beast Transformation Syndrome?" Mujwa stroked his chin thoughtfully. Oda said in a low voice, "It shouldn't be them. Only the original Beastmen can spread the Beast Transformation Syndrome, not us descendants. I think there's something else going on here." Mujwa didn't refute him. He pondered for a moment and said, "After delivering these goods, you go to Dying Frost Province and investigate. If the situation is too critical, the Merchant Guild will have to consider shrinking its business in the province." "Understood." Oda nodded solemnly. The two then fell silent, and the carriage was soon filled with quietude. At that moment, a commotion suddenly erupted from outside. Curious, Mujwa lifted the curtain and looked out, discovering 3 black leopards running through the street, attracting the attention of passers-by. Blackrock leopards! Mujwa immediately recognized the origin of the black leopards. Since the Blackstone City battle, the reputation of the Black Rock Cavalry had spread throughout the Golden Rock province. Many knew that this cavalry regiment possessed a powerful mount called the Black Rock Leopard, each with knight-level combat strength, fearless, and even more outstanding than the best warhorses. The Black Rock Cavalry's fame was largely due to the Black Rock Leopards. Many noble lords coveted them. Mujwa had once sounded out Kay's intentions about purchasing Black Rock Leopards, but his offer was promptly rejected. But what surprised Mujwa this time wasn't the Black Rock Leopards, but the 3 children riding on their backs. 2 boys and 1 girl, all 13 or 14 years old. Who are these 3? Mujwa wondered silently. Their age clearly indicated they couldn't be part of the Black Rock Cavalry, yet they were riding Black Rock Leopards. Their status in Shining Light City must be quite high. Suddenly, something clicked in Mujwa's mind. He heard that Sunan had taken on 3 apprentices at the beginning of the year. Could these be those 3 kids? Whoosh! The wind whistled past his ears, and the scenery on both sides flew by rapidly. Siaman rode on the back of the Black Rock Leopard, his face filled with excitement, experiencing the thrill of his first leopard ride, feeling the blood rush through his veins. Kore, on the other side, shared the same excitement, his eyes sparkling. Only Atur felt a little pale, struggling to adapt to such a fast speed. Before long, the 3 arrived at their destination. This is the base the teacher mentioned? Siaman curiously examined the towering stone wall and the closed gate in front of him. Upon closer inspection, he noticed faint, peculiar patterns on the surface of the stone wall. He vaguely remembered seeing such patterns in a book, seemingly a type of enchantment rune that strengthened the hardness of objects. Boom! The closed gate suddenly opened, and a familiar figure rushed out from within, teleporting in front of the 3. It was Amy. Meow, you finally came? I've been waiting for a long time. Amy waved to the 3. Come in quickly. Nan is busy. Let me take you on a tour of the base first, so you can familiarize yourselves with the place. Under Amy's guidance, Siaman and the others cautiously entered the base, that n/o/vel/b//in.c//om. Upon passing through the gate, they discovered 2 giant rock creatures standing behind it. Stone golems! Atur exclaimed. She had seen pictures of stone golems in books, but this was the first time she saw them in person. Siaman and Kore also stared at the stone golems, their eyes wide with wonder. They are the base's guards, Meow. Amy explained. As she spoke, a group of clay golems approached from afar, seemingly about to leave the base. Amy glanced back and said, a merchant convoy just arrived with some deliveries. They're going to move things. Come on, let's keep going. She hopped forward, bouncing cheerfully, and the 3 followed closely behind. Amy was very diligent, explaining the purpose of each place they visited. This is the meditation area. You can meditate here in the future. Just pick any empty meditation chamber. This is the magic training area. You see those humanoid targets? Once you've learned magic, you can practice here. This is the experimental area, where we conduct experiments. This is the living area, your future residence. This is the potion production area. The base was incredibly vast. Along the way, the variety of facilities overwhelmed the 3 youngsters. Unconsciously, they arrived at the puppet factory. Siaman immediately noticed a towering steel behemoth standing in a corner and couldn't help but widen his eyes. What is that? Amy glanced at it and said, that's a steel golem. So this is a steel golem. The book Siaman and the others had read only described lower-level golems, briefly mentioning the steel golem without going into detail. Seeing it in person, they were awestruck. It's so huge. Amy, is the steel golem much stronger than the stone golem? Kore asked curiously. Of course, the steel golem's combat power is equivalent to a legendary knight. Upon hearing Amy's answer, The three youngsters gasped in unison, their eyes wide with astonishment. This hulking giant was as powerful as a legendary knight. They couldn't help but swallow hard, their gazes filled with awe towards the steel golem. Their admiration for Su Nin deepened even further. How powerful must their teacher be to create a steel golem? Leaving the puppet factory, Amy led the three to tour the magic plant garden before heading straight to the warehouse. The final stop of the base tour was the warehouse. As they approached the warehouse, Shimon heard a melodious music from afar. "It's a violin," said Arthur, closing his eyes and listening for a moment, his tone certain. Corey nodded. "The musician's skill is outstanding, even better than my previous violin teacher." Shimon scratched his head. He couldn't discern the difference. He just thought it sounded nice. "It's little Grilly playing. She loves to play the violin," Amy said, leading the way towards the warehouse. Shimon and the other three suppressed their confusion and quickly followed. Upon reaching the warehouse, they discovered a small chair placed in front of the door. A tiny figure was sitting on it, intently playing the violin. The little figure was only about 20 centimeters tall, slender and delicate in appearance, looking like a girl who had been shrunk countless times. She had pale green skin with slight scales, deep green hair adorned with shells and pearls, and a shawl woven from various seaweeds, giving her an uncanny beauty. Arthur's eyes sparkled. "So cute." Shimon hesitated. "Is this a little elf?" Shimon is right. Little Grilly is a Griley, a helper Su Nan summoned from another world just a few days ago. Amy said, "Another world summoning? Griley?" Shimon and the other three listened, feeling awestruck. Don't underestimate little Grilly's age. She has lived for many years. Grileys are a rare immortal race. The three apprentices widened their eyes in astonishment. Immortal race? Doesn't that mean they live forever? Are there such races in this world? At this moment, the melodious violin music slowly stopped, followed by a delicate and pleasant voice. "Amy, it's not a good habit to talk about a lady's age behind her back." "Why?" "I'm telling the truth." Amy turned around in confusion. Grilly, who had walked over, glanced at Amy helplessly and sighed, no longer paying attention to the idiot. She turned to Shimon and the others, smiling slightly. "Nice to meet you. I'm Grilly, the newly appointed warehouse manager." Shimon and the others snapped out of their astonishment and quickly introduced themselves. "I know you all. Lord Sunan told me about you." Grilly smiled slightly and motioned for them to follow her, leading them to a bulletin board. "Take a look at this." Shimon and the others focused their eyes on the board, discovering that it was filled with tasks. Caring for magic plants, cleaning the lab, extracting silver moonflower, maintaining clay golems, repairing humanoid targets, making lower-grade revitalization potions, making lower-grade dragon's blood potions, making brute force potions, refining blackrock beasts. There were about 20 or 30 tasks in total. Each task was labeled with its location, time, access conditions, and the contribution points earned upon completion. Among them, tasks like caring for magic plants, cleaning the lab, and maintaining clay golems offered the lowest contribution points, only single digits. Next came extracting silver moonflower and repairing humanoid targets, offering more than 10 points each. However, the former required basic knowledge of potion making. The latter required mastering the zero-ring spell, repair. They were not something they could take on at this time. As for the following tasks of making various potions and refining blackrock beasts, they were even further out of reach. Looking at the tasks, Arthur pondered and turned his head to ask, "Grilly-sama, are the contribution points earned from completing tasks used to exchange for certain items?" "Just call me Grilly." Grilly nodded, confirming Arthur's guess. "You're right. Contribution points can be exchanged for resources here. There's a rule among wizards. It's called equivalent exchange. If you want to obtain something, you must pay something of equal value, including knowledge. The previous meditation methods, knowledge, and potions were gifts from Lord Su Nan as your teacher. But from today onwards, you will have to earn resources through labor." Grilly led the three to another bulletin board, which listed various resources. From small items like clay, silver, blackstone iron, silver moonflower, and various books, to large items like super ability potions, secondary magic items, and rune gems, which made Shimon and the others' eyes light up. They had already learned from Amy how valuable these items were. Everything was available. Even steel golems were available for exchange. They were quite excited. But when they saw the contribution points needed to exchange for a steel golem, their hearts skipped a beat, and they immediately dismissed the unrealistic idea. "You guys are lucky," Amy said from the side. "The Starsea continent is resource scarce these days. Many things on this board can't be found outside. Only Sunan can get them. As long as you work hard enough, you won't lack resources to quickly improve your strength." Shimon, Kore, and Arter were inspired by Amy's words. Over the past half year, through studying books and chatting with Amy, they had already understood the importance of resources for a wizard apprentice. Without sufficient resources, it would be difficult for a wizard apprentice to even meditate and increase their spiritual power, let alone pursue truth. Now, their teacher had provided them with a platform where they could exchange resources for labor. As long as they worked hard to earn contribution points, they could continuously grow stronger, until one day they became strong like their teacher. "I'll be staying here in the warehouse. If you want to take on tasks, check your contribution points, or exchange items, feel free to come find me anytime," Grilly said. After saying that, she picked up her violin again. Seeing this, Shimon and the others wisely bid farewell and left. On the way to the residential area, Amy continued to chatter. "Don't underestimate little Grilly. Even though she's small, her archery skills are amazing, and she can use various charm spells, detection spells, and invisibility spells. Even I'm no match for her." Shimon and the others responded half-heartedly, their minds wandering to other things. For young apprentices, everything they had seen was so new and strange. Before today, they had read many books and believed they had a certain understanding of the world of wizards. But after seeing the facilities of the base with their own eyes, they finally felt like they had lifted a curtain and caught a glimpse of a corner of the wizard world, NOVLB //JNN. Their previous assumptions were nothing more than the thinking of a frog at the bottom of a well. Shimon felt it even more deeply. Thinking about his dream of living in a castle, he couldn't help but laugh at himself. His past self was truly shallow and ridiculous. The world was far vaster than he thought. Compared to the vast and mysterious world of wizards, a mere noble castle was like a grain of sand, insignificant. "I must become a wizard, see more of the world." At that moment, the young apprentice secretly made up his mind. The magic stone lamp emitted a warm glow, illuminating the entire workshop as if it were daytime. After successfully synthesizing the magic stone, Sunan immediately replaced all the lighting fixtures in the base with magic stone lamps. Compared to torches and oil lamps, the light from magic stone lamps was much more stable and brighter. Energy consumption was also low, with a single magic stone able to sustain the magic stone lamp for over half a year. Similarly, the alcohol lamps used in potion making were also replaced with higher precision burning lamps powered by magic stones. Thanks to this, Sunan's potion-making success rate increased by a few percentage points. Under the bright lights, Sunan looked intently at the ring in his palm, a smile of joy on his face. After the materials he commissioned from the Firefox Trading Company were delivered, he immediately began manufacturing magical items. The first item he chose was a spatial magic item. Following the plan he had set earlier, Sunan created 7 alchemy-grade space rings in one go, then placed them all in the magic cube, successfully synthesizing a microlight-grade space ring. Space ring, microlight-grade/low magical item, containing 5 cubic meters of storage space. Objects placed inside are unaffected by the passage of time, but living beings cannot be placed inside. Alchemy-grade space rings were only 0.5 cubic meters in size and did not have the effect of pausing the flow of time. However, after synthesizing the microlight-grade space ring, the space expanded tenfold, and it also gained the effect of pausing the flow of time, making it far superior to the alchemy-grade space ring. "I won't have to keep taking things in and out of the magic cube anymore." Sunan put the space ring on his hand and nodded in satisfaction. Next, I need to make micro-light-grade magic items for attack and defense. Defensive magic items were easy to choose. Low-level magical item encyclopedia contained the manufacturing methods for defensive rings, and Sunan could follow those to manufacture a few, then synthesize them. As for attack-type magic items, Sunan thought long and hard before finally choosing an alchemy-grade magic item called the Ice Burst Necklace. Its effect was to create an explosion of extreme cold shockwaves centered on the user, dealing ice damage to an area within 10 meters, and adding a frost retardation effect. It could deal damage and control the battlefield at the same time. A win-win situation. However, unlike space rings, which only need to be sufficient, attack and defense magic items were always better with greater power. So Sunan planned to manufacture more, hoping to synthesize micro-light-grade magic items with greater power. He just needed to be on the verge of breaking through to the level of a wizard. After all, wizard equipment required the spiritual power of a formal wizard to control and use. With that in mind, I'll definitely need a lot of them for synthesis. Sunan took a deep breath, concentrated his spirit, and continued to devote himself to the manufacturing of magical items. Starlight Calendar 1251. Just a few days after the New Year celebrations, the first batch of dragon blood fruits ripened. Sunan immediately gathered a group of guards and had them take the dragon blood fruits to test their specific effects. The results pleased him greatly. The effect of the dragon blood fruit on strengthening physique was roughly equivalent to 1/3 of a low-grade secondary dragon blood potion. This was already quite good. After all, Shining Light City's current monthly production of secondary dragon blood potion was less than 20 bottles, while dragon blood fruit could produce over 1,000 fruits every 3 months, which translated to over 100 bottles of secondary dragon blood potion per month. Production had increased by more than 5 times. This production volume was enough to supply the current army of Shining Light City. Even if Shining Light City expanded its army in the future, it wouldn't be a problem, as the dragon blood fruits production could continue to increase as long as the planning scale was expanded. The only prerequisite was to have enough apprentices to care for and cultivate them. This required time to solve. Level 1 summoning technique could increase the number of helpers, but it was too uncertain. Sunan had tried hundreds of times and only managed to summon a suitable one like Griley. Finding enough helpers through this method would also take a long time. The key is to attract them to stay. Griley was an immortal race, and her long life gave her ample time and interest to experience everything that could bring her new and exciting things. Therefore, after being summoned by Sunan, when she heard that she would be the warehouse manager of the base, she immediately expressed great interest and agreed without hesitation. Her requested remuneration was also not high, only 3 magic stones per month. According to Griley, witnessing the growth of a group of young wizard apprentices was quite an interesting thing. Sunan guessed that young wizard apprentices included not only Siaman and the other 3, but perhaps himself as well. Besides the dragon blood fruit, the planting of the silver moon flower was also very encouraging. Because they were planted early, the silver moon flowers had already been harvested twice. The improved silver moon flower yielded significantly more essence when extracted, greatly reducing the cost of synthesizing super ability potions. It was also because of this that Sunan had extra secondary revitalization potions to provide to his 3 students. After the 3 little ones took on the task of caring for the magic plants and extracting the essence of the silver moon flower, he was instantly relieved and had more time to devote to other tasks. It was worth mentioning that not long ago, the 3 little ones all successfully constructed their first star ring. Siaman was the fastest, achieving it in just over 7 months. Most of this was due to the secondary revitalization potions. Sunan remembered that when he first started practicing the star ring meditation method, he only used silver moon flower essence, which was far less effective than the secondary revitalization potions. In comparison, the 3 little ones were undoubtedly luckier, having potions to help them with their meditation from the very beginning. However, even under those circumstances, Sunan only took 6 months to construct his first star ring. From this point of view, the 3 little ones' aptitude was not as good as his. The second to construct a star ring was Corey, who took almost 8 months, a few days slower than Siaman. The last one was a Tur, who took about 9 months. After successfully constructing their first star ring, the 3 little ones were now learning zero-ring spells. However, Sunan estimated that it would take them half a year or more to master their first spell. This was still with the enhancement of secondary revitalization potions. After all, they didn't have panels or other cheat codes like him to speed up their spell mastery. Speaking of panels, Sunan opened his and took a look. The star ring meditation method had now reached level 9, and he had constructed 8 star rings, only 1 more to go. As he expected, the amount of proficiency required to upgrade the 9th level star ring meditation method had skyrocketed to 200,000. According to his estimate, it would take at least 6 months to break through and upgrade NOV LB //JNN. His spiritual power was currently 23.88. Once he constructed the 9th star ring, it would probably increase to 25. The higher the level, the harder it becomes to increase spiritual power. To quickly advance to 3rd rank Wizard Apprentice, I really have to rely on the Nightmare Potion. Is this the Dragon Blood Fruit? Kay stared at the baskets overflowing with bright red fruits, his eyes practically glowing. This thing really has 1/3 the effect of a lower-grade Dragon Blood Potion? Sunan smiled slightly. Do you want to have someone test it? No need. Don't we trust each other? Kay laughed heartily. He wasn't questioning Sunan, of course. He was just too excited. The supply of lower-grade Dragon Blood Potions couldn't keep up with demand, causing the Blackrock Cavalry's expansion to slow significantly. Even with the full support of the entire territory, the Blackrock Cavalry currently only had around 300 members. Of those, only about 2/3 were actual knights. Kay still had a long way to go before achieving his goal of an all-knight army. He dreamed of Sunan finding a substitute for the lower-grade Dragon Blood Potion. Thankfully, this problem had finally been solved. With this batch of Dragon Blood fruits, the Blackrock Cavalry, stagnant for so long, could finally accelerate its expansion. Bredd, Jordan, and Sterry, standing behind Kay, all had beaming faces. They all understood what the Dragon Blood fruits meant. With this, the Shining Light Territory's military power could experience another rapid surge. Right, this is for you? Sunan tossed Kay a Dragon Blood fruit. The latter instinctively reached out to catch it, questioning, "This is a specially modified Dragon Blood fruit. After eating it, you should be able to break through to become a mid-level Great Knight," Sunan explained. In reality, it was a synthetic Dragon Blood fruit, made from hundreds of original ones. If converted to Dragon Blood Potions, it would be equivalent to 3 or 4 upper-grade Dragon Blood Potions. Hearing Sunan's words, Kay's spirit soared. He carefully stored the Dragon Blood fruit, planning to eat it at a suitable time. Such a precious thing couldn't be carelessly wasted. It would be best to immediately practice the breathing technique after consumption to achieve optimal absorption. Recovering from his joy, Kay smiled and said, "I've already issued a decree. From now on, all children in the territory who reach the age of 12 will undergo aptitude testing. Those who test positive for Wizard Apprentice aptitude will be sent to the base and placed under your training." Pausing for a moment, Kay hesitated, finally unable to hold back. "Could you lower your selection standards for Wizard Apprentices?" Out of the entire Shining Light territory, only 3 Wizard Apprentices were selected, which was too few. Sunan shook his head. Being able to read introductory books is the bare minimum standard. He wished he could select more apprentices, but the standard was fixed and he couldn't do anything about it. People without wizard aptitude would be useless even if sent to the base. They could only do basic cleaning tasks, which the clay golems already handled. Ultimately, selecting and training wizard apprentices was a long and arduous process. It couldn't be rushed. With the Shining Light Territory's current population, finding a qualified apprentice every 2 or 3 years was already quite good. Unless the territory expanded significantly, acquiring more land and population, the number of apprentices wouldn't see significant growth in the short term. Hearing their conversation, Jordan couldn't help but glance at Sterry, sighing softly. "I envy your Kore for being able to become Sunan's student. Why doesn't my boy have that talent?" Mentioning his son, Sterry's usually stoic face couldn't help but show a hint of pride. When his son was found to have wizard aptitude, he was ecstatic. If his son also became a powerful figure like Sunan, the McKinnon family might rise to prominence and become a true noble lineage. Seeing Sterry's beaming face, Jordan felt sour, like he'd eaten a lemon. He began to ponder whether he should have more children. My youngest son will be 12 next year. I'll have him participate in the testing, Bread said with anticipation. With Sterry's son as an example, all the knights in the Shining Light territory who had families hoped their children would become wizards. Kay didn't pay attention to his three subordinates' whispered conversation. He turned to another topic with Sunan. The beast transformation plague in Frost Eye Province is getting worse. It's not just Silver Ridge City. The plague has begun to spread to other towns as well. Sunan was surprised. Didn't the Frost Eye Marquis mobilize his army to suppress it? I heard that during the suppression, dozens of knights were infected, causing the situation to worsen. The army dispatched for suppression suffered heavy losses. I believe the Frost Eye Marquis must be in a desperate situation now. Sunan's lips twitched slightly. Beast transformation plague usually resulted in complete loss of reason, accompanied by a surge in strength, akin to a permanent rage state. If a knight was infected, a 1 or 2 level increase in combat power was normal. If a peak knight was infected, their combat power could even skyrocket to the level of a great knight. Dozens of infected knights were enough to directly assault a fully equipped 1,000-man cavalry regiment. The thought was chilling. How could the commanding general responsible for suppression allow the situation to deteriorate to this point? As if sensing Sunan's confusion, Kay continued, the commanding general responsible for suppression has been relieved of his duties by the Frost Eye Marquis. The new commander is Lord Yon. He is a veteran general who has followed the Frost Eye Marquis on numerous campaigns and is also a legendary knight. With him in charge, the beast transformation plague should be suppressed quickly. Kay spoke with absolute confidence that n/o/vel/b/and.c//om. After all, a legendary knight was the pinnacle of combat power in the Starcy Duchy. Such a powerful figure could easily suppress a group of infected individuals who had lost their minds. In fact, all the nobles who knew about this situation shared the same sentiment. But the situation's development defied everyone's expectations. In the Starlight calendar year 1251, spring dawn month March, legendary knight Yon was besieged by thousands of infected individuals in Jade Orchid City. After an exhausting battle, he was killed. The accompanying elite cavalry regiment was completely wiped out. The news shocked the entire Starcy Duchy. Countless nobles focused their attention on Frost Eye Province. In the same year, Thunderclap month, April, the beast transformation plague spread at an alarming rate. Apart from the central city of Frost Eye City, almost the entire Frost Eye Province was affected by the plague. As the origin of the plague, Silver Ridge City became a wasteland. The bordering Lake Orchid Province, Red Leaf Province, and White Pagoda Province all established blockades on their borders, prohibiting residents of Frost Eye Province from entering their territories. In the same month, the Frost Eye Marquis sent a plea for help to the capital, requesting reinforcements. The following month, the Starcy Duke dispatched troops into Frost Eye Province to begin suppressing the infected. For a time, the entire Starcy Duchy seemed to be enveloped in an atmosphere of uncertainty. The tumultuous situation outside did not affect Sunan's development. Time entered the end of the Xiaolong month. Shortly after his 19th birthday, Sunan constructed his 9th star ring. By now, he had completed half of the requirements to advance to a 3rd-rank wizard apprentice. In the meditation chamber, Sunan sat cross-legged, gazing at the panel and the void. Sunan, Arnest, human male. Spirit 25.35/Constitution 17.88. Skills. Star Ring Meditation Method LV10. 35/300000. Potion Crafting LV4. 781/10,000. n/o/vel/b/and.c//om. Creature Modification LV2. 1402/3000. Puppetry Refining LV3 457/6000. Magical Item Crafting LV2 1532/3000. A happy smile appeared on Su Nan's face as he looked at the data on the panel. Next, I only need to increase my spirit to 30 to become a third-rank wizard apprentice. Su Nan estimated that the evil illusion potion could increase his spirit by at least 2 points. In other words, he still had to increase his spirit to 28 or above. Currently, I only gain 0.01 point of spiritual power every day through meditation. To reach 28 points, it will take about 8 to 9 months. Considering that spiritual power becomes more difficult to increase as you progress, it will probably take even longer. Unfortunately, I'm already at the limit with second-order potions. If I could use third-order super ability potions, my meditation efficiency would be even higher. Su Nan felt a slight sense of regret. Even so, advancing to a third-rank wizard apprentice before turning 20 was already considered outstanding. At least on the current Starry Light continent, Su Nan didn't think many wizard apprentices had a speed of cultivation that could match his. Shaking off his greedy thoughts, Su Nan stood up and left the meditation chamber, heading towards the workshop. The manufacturing and synthesis of microlight-level magical items were nearing completion. During this time, he had successively manufactured more than 20 protective rings and ice blast necklaces. Based on the information obtained from a magic cube, he had almost reached the limit for synthesizing microlight-level magical items. After crafting another protective ring and ice blast necklace in the workshop, Su Nan began the synthesis process. First, he added 25 protective rings. This was the limit for the microlight level. Adding one more would cause it to transmute into a wizard artifact. As the synthesis interface flashed, a new magical item was born. Extreme Protection Ring, microlight/low magical item. When the wearer is attacked, an invisible protective force field will automatically form around the wearer's body. It can also be activated manually. Defense value 1000. Can be restored by infusing spiritual power or automatically absorbing free energy particles. Compared to the alchemy-level protective ring obtained from Master Amy, the Extreme Protection Ring didn't have a usage limit. Instead, it had a defense value. This couldn't be considered superior or inferior. However, the feature of automatically activating protection when encountering an attack deeply appealed to Su Nan. After all, no one could guarantee that they could react in time when ambushed. With this function, at least he wouldn't have to worry about being ambushed anymore. Su Nan then summoned the steel magic puppet and instructed it to cooperate in testing the defensive capabilities of the Extreme Protection Ring. The result made him extremely satisfied. With Su Nan standing still and not using any other defenses, the steel magic puppet relentlessly attacked for over a minute before finally breaking through the protection of the Extreme Protection Ring. Keep in mind that this was a full-power attack from a legendary knight. This meant that in the future, if Su Nan encountered an opponent of Ho Chi's level, he could freely attack without any defense for at least a minute. In battle, allowing a wizard apprentice to cast spells without any worries for a full minute, the consequences were self-evident. At least with Su Nan's current spiritual power and spellcasting ability, 1 minute was enough for him to unleash 30 to 40 spells. Truly worthy of the highest level, microlight level magical item. Su Nan was overjoyed. Microlight level magical items were the highest level magical items that wizard apprentices could use. And the Extreme Protection Ring he created was crafted at the limit of microlight level, its power exceeding ordinary microlight level items by a large margin. No wonder his defensive power was so incredible. After testing the Extreme Protection Ring, Su Nan began synthesizing the Ice Blast Necklace. Ice Seal Necklace, microlight/low magical item. Activating it will release an extremely cold shockwave centered on the wearer, covering a radius of 100 meters. All creatures within this range will suffer ice-cold damage, accompanied by a frost-slowing effect. The closer the distance to the wearer, the greater the damage. After use, it needs to be recharged before it can be used again. Once again, the steel magic puppet served as the test subject. With the impressive performance of the Extreme Protection Ring beforehand, Su Nan became cautious and instructed the steel magic puppet to maintain a distance of 30 meters, then activated the ice seal necklace. Crack! Instantly, an icy cold feeling, so cold that it threatened to freeze one's marrow, descended from the sky. With Su Nan as the center, a visible white frost erupted outwards, instantly filling every inch of space within a radius of 100 meters. The steel magic puppet, not far away, was almost instantly covered in a thick layer of frost. A layer of light blue ice emerged from its feet, spreading rapidly upwards along its ankles. Crack! Crack! In the blink of an eye, the steel magic puppet was frozen solid into an ice sculpture. Although it shattered the ice and broke free with its immense strength a second later, its movements were clearly affected and slowed down. Su Nan immediately deactivated the ice seal necklace. The air still held the chilling cold. Under the attack of the terrifying cold, the ground within a radius of 100 meters had been completely covered in ice, forming a thin layer of light blue ice. Amazing! Su Nan was full of excitement. This power truly exceeded his expectations. Keep in mind that the steel magic puppet, as a construct life form, had an extremely high resistance to elemental damage, and it was 30 meters away. Yet it still suffered significant damage and impact, which showed just how powerful the ice seal necklace was. If it were a flesh and blood creature within a range of 2 or 3 meters, even someone like Ho Chi, a legendary knight, would either die or be seriously injured. The ice seal necklace paired with the extreme protection ring is a perfect match. Su Nan's eyes glinted slightly. The ice seal necklace already had such powerful abilities. What if it were replaced with a microlight level magical item that didn't focus on control effects, but purely on damage? How terrifying would its power be? Su Nan suddenly felt a little itchy, eager to create one right away. But when he thought about the materials consumed in creating the extreme protection ring and the ice seal necklace, his impulsive desire to create more quickly died down. He now had less than 100 gold coins left. Until the new potion profits were received, he wouldn't be able to create more microlight level magical items. My income is still too low. I can't do many things. Su Nan sighed slightly. The most direct way to increase income was to expand the scale of potion sales. However, he couldn't spend too much time making potions. He was already at his limit. He could only wait until Siaman and the others grew up and learned how to make potions, then consider expanding the scale. After over a year of construction and improvement, the base was now basically on track. Most of the miscellaneous matters didn't need Su Nan to handle, as the clay golems and 3 apprentices were responsible for them. Besides occasionally checking on the state of the magic plant garden, he spent most of his energy on meditation, crafting enchanted weapons, and making potions. Both his spiritual power and skill proficiency were steadily growing. He had thought that this state of affairs would continue until he was promoted to a 3rd-rank wizard apprentice. But what happened next shattered Su Nan's peaceful life. Starlight Calendar 1251, Month of Blazing Fire. The Duke's reinforcements stationed in the Frost Eye province, while trying to quell the Silver Ridge city, were suddenly attacked from multiple directions by infected individuals, suffering heavy losses, with less than 1 in 10 surviving. The disaster in Frost Eye province completely deteriorated, and the infected horde immediately spread to neighboring provinces. The borderlines of Red Leaf Province, White Tower Province, and Lake Blue Province were successively attacked by the infected horde, hanging precariously. The 3 marquises quickly mobilized heavy troops to station them at the border, resisting the invasion of the infected. For a while, the entire southwest of the duchy was filled with the smoke of war. Council Chamber. Su Nan browsed the battle report in his hand, his brow slightly furrowed. The disaster is spreading too fast, and the several military suppression attempts have all failed in an unusual manner. You feel that way too, indeed. Kay handed him a letter. This is a letter sent by President Mujua. Take a look. Su Nan took the envelope, opened it, and his eyes narrowed slightly. The contents of the letter were concise, meaning that Mujua had sent his bodyguard, the Beastman Oda, to Frost Eye Province to investigate the outbreak of the Beast Transformation Syndrome. Upon arriving there, Oda discovered that his own race's dwelling place was already deserted, and all his kin had vanished. He followed the clues and investigated, but inadvertently discovered a group of mysterious individuals manipulating the infected individuals of Beast Transformation Syndrome from behind the scenes. Just when he wanted to continue approaching the investigation, he was discovered by the other party, and after a fierce battle, he managed to escape at the cost of serious injuries. After that, Oda didn't dare stay in Frost Eye Province any longer and fled back to the Thornflower Duchy overnight. After learning about the situation from Oda, Mujua immediately realized how deep the water behind this matter was and decisively stopped the investigation. As a gesture of goodwill to Shining Light territory, he subsequently wrote this letter, informing Kei and Su Nan of the report. In other words, this Beast Transformation Syndrome outbreak was indeed deliberately orchestrated by someone behind the scenes. Su Nan put down the envelope, his eyes thoughtful. But what is the purpose of the mastermind behind this? Could it be a move by another country? Kei said, the Starlight Continent was not peaceful, and every year, countries would go to war over territorial resources. For example, the Azure Gold Empire bordering the Starbright Duchy had always been eyeing the Starbright Duchy. If it wasn't for the fact that the Azure Gold Empire had just ended a war and needed to recuperate, they might have launched a full-scale invasion of the Starbright Duchy long ago. Su Nan pondered for a moment and shook his head. It's unlikely. To be able to guide a disaster that affects several provinces, the mastermind's influence within the duchy must be deeply rooted. Other countries don't have this kind of power. Kei thought about it for a moment and agreed. If other countries had this ability, they would have much better ways to conquer the Starbright Duchy. There was no need to use such a method with huge after-effects. Doing so, even if they succeeded in seizing the Starbright Duchy, they would only end up with a mess. But if it's not that, then who's behind all this? Kei asked in confusion. Su Nan said calmly, no matter who it is, the mastermind's motives must be immense, and their actions won't be small. Now that the disaster has spread to this point, the other party should be ready to jump out. As if to confirm Su Nan's words, Kei's secretary suddenly rushed into the council chamber. Lord, there is new intelligence from Golden Rock City. Hearing that it was about Golden Rock City, Kei immediately became more serious, quickly taking the parchment from the secretary and carefully reading it. After reading the content on it, Kei's face had become extremely serious. He looked up at Su Nan and said in a solemn tone, Marquis, Golden Rock has betrayed. Su Nan was slightly taken aback. This morning, Marquis Golden Rock declared that Golden Rock Province is independent from the Starbright Duchy. NOV.L.B/JNN. Earl Stormwind, Earl Winterfrost, Viscount Black, and Viscount Feather Serpent have all responded, and they have now raised the flag of rebellion and formed a coalition army. Su Nan's expression shifted, and he understood. I see. It seems the mastermind behind this Beast Transformation Syndrome incident is most likely Marquis Golden Rock. Kei also realized it at this time. Marquis Golden Rock launching a rebellion, with one province against the remaining 6 provinces of the duchy, seemed extremely unwise. But the timing he chose was impeccable. Right now, Frost Eye Province was almost destroyed, its army had been crippled, and it was nothing to worry about. Red Leaf Province, White Tower Province, and Lake Blue Province were facing the invasion of the infected horde. Overwhelmed and in a state of turmoil, they had no time to deal with Marquis Golden Rock. The remaining Soman Province and Purple Bamboo Province were still safe for now. However, the combined strength of these 2 provinces was among the bottom in the entire duchy. Even combined, they were no match for Golden Rock Province alone. Even if they didn't deal with Marquis Golden Rock would probably have to attack them. Or, to put it another way, his initial goal was probably these 2 provinces. Taking advantage of the spreading disaster, swallowing Soman Province and Purple Bamboo Province to increase his strength, and then plotting against other provinces. Of course, it's also possible that Marquis Golden Rock merely happened to be at the time of the disaster and was not the mastermind behind it. However, thinking back to how Marquis Golden Rock had been plotting to control the power of the entire Golden Rock Province for years, it was highly unlikely that he had no idea about the current situation. "We need to prepare early," Kay said in a deep voice. Su Nen also nodded solemnly. Before launching a war against the outside world, Marquis Goldenrock's first step would inevitably be to eliminate any stubborn forces within the province. And after years of secret development, there were now few noble lords in Golden Rock Province who didn't obey Marquis Goldenrock. Coincidentally, Shining Light territory was one of them, and it was the most outspoken. It was foreseeable that Marquis Goldenrock would definitely send troops to attack Shining Light territory first. Considering the worst-case scenario, Shining Light territory would be facing a coalition army from almost the entire Golden Rock Province in the future. The situation was dire. However, neither Kay nor Su Nen showed any signs of panic. They had known from a long time ago that Shining Light territory would eventually clash with Marquis Goldenrock. The reason why they worked hard to accumulate power was to prepare for this moment. Therefore, when it actually happened, they felt a strange sense of relief that it had finally come. Winter will be in over 3 months, and Marquis Goldenrock will definitely want to end the war before the roads are blocked by snow. I estimate that he will soon send a large army to attack us. We must immediately make preparations to welcome war. Starlight Calendar 1251, Month of Burning Fire. Marquis Goldenrock launched a rebellion and issued a declaration of independence. Following closely behind, Earl Stormwind, Earl Winterfrost, Viscount Blackscale, Viscount Featherserpent, and 12 other powerful lords responded, forming the Goldenrock Alliance. The next day, the Goldenrock Alliance dispatched troops to conquer the noble lords within the Goldenrock Province who opposed the Declaration of Independence. This included 3 barons and 1 viscount. The flames of war were about to ignite. Shining Light City, Council Hall. Kay, Su Nen, 3 knights, and a group of other knights gathered in the hall, discussing how to confront the Goldenrock Alliance. According to intelligence, Marquis Goldenrock has already led his army to Mount Light City, which happens to be located near the intersection of the borderlines of the Solman Province, the Purple Bamboo Province, and the Goldenrock Province. I speculate that Marquis Goldenrock intends to personally oversee the situation, preventing a surprise attack from the Solman Province and the Purple Bamboo Province. A long table was set up in the center of the hall, with a military map of the Starfall Duchy spread out on it. Bread was explaining the Goldenrock Alliance's intentions to those present. With each sentence, he would point out the corresponding location on the map. Besides Marquis Goldenrock, the rest of the Alliance's nobles are divided into 4 groups. Viscount Blackscale leads 1 force, responsible for attacking Red Horn territory. Viscount Featherserpent leads 1 force, responsible for attacking Bright Heart territory. Viscount Fong Wolf leads 1 force, responsible for attacking Stone Mountain territory. Earl Stormwind and Earl Winterfrost combined forces to attack our Shining Light territory. As the last sentence fell, everyone present involuntarily twitched their mouths and glanced at Su Nen. The other 3 territories being attacked were each led by a viscount. But Shining Light territory was being attacked by 2 earls working together. The key was that Shining Light territory was just a barren territory, and this kind of treatment was simply too exceptional. Everyone present knew that the reason Shining Light territory was receiving such obvious preferential treatment from the Goldenrock Alliance was entirely because of Su Nen's presence. Perhaps in the eyes of Marquis Goldenrock, Su Nen alone was more troublesome than an entire Viscount territory. Facing the gazes of everyone, Su Nen remained calm and composed, his expression unruffled. Kay coughed lightly and asked, "How many soldiers do Earl Stormwind and Earl Winterfrost have?" "Preliminary estimates suggest at least 30,000, Bread replied with a solemn expression. As soon as this number was announced, the other generals furrowed their brows. Although Shining Light territory had been continuously expanding its military strength and had the 2 trump cards of Dragon Blood Fruit and lower-grade Revitalization Potion, its military power had grown rapidly. However, as of now, excluding the militia, only about 8,000 soldiers were truly capable of fighting. This level of military strength already surpassed most Viscount territories, but it was still a bit inadequate against 2 earls. Where are they now? Kay asked again. Brett glanced at the map and replied, "They will enter Shining Light territory within 10 days at most." Judging from their march route, Earl Stormwind's destination is Firefly Castle, while Earl Winterfrost's destination is Jilin City. They seem to want to stretch out the battle lines and disperse our forces. Kay pondered for a moment, then suddenly called out, "Jordan Sterry." "Yes, sir." The two knights immediately stood up. "I am allocating 3,000 troops to you. You are to guard Jilin City and hold off Earl Winterfrost for at least 2 months. "Yes, sir." Jordan and Sterry readily agreed. Jilin City was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, with steep terrain. Only the plain in front was relatively suitable for deploying troops, making defense easier and less demanding. It could be considered a fortress that is easy to defend but difficult to attack. With 3,000 troops in hand, they had a good chance of holding Jilin City for 2 months. "I will personally lead the army and garrison Firefly Castle," Kay said in a deep voice. Brett immediately understood Kay's intentions and hesitated. "Sir, are you planning to defeat Earl Stormwind's army within 2 months? Isn't that a bit too rushed?" Kay shook his head. How could he not know this? But Jordan and Sterry, with 3,000 troops, could already be considered quite capable if they could withstand Earl Winterfrost for 2 months. If they could not defeat Earl Stormwind within this period, and if Earl Winterfrost were to break through Jilin City first, then they would face a much worse situation when surrounded from both sides. Although there was a significant disparity in force, with 5,000 against over 10,000, Kay was not without his trump cards. First, there was the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment. Thanks to the Dragon Blood Fruit, the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment had now expanded to 500 in size. Although only 2/3 of the members were knights, their combat prowess was still extremely impressive. Searching throughout the Goldenrock province, one would find no other army as elite as the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment. With the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment, Kay was confident in facing Earl Stormwind's army head-on. Secondly, there was, of course, Sunan. Kay turned to Sunan and said solemnly, "Sunan, do you have any suggestions?" Sunan said calmly, "I need a batch of gems and a large quantity of granite. N/O/vel/B/C//OM." Everyone was taken aback, their faces filled with confusion. Kay immediately reacted, his eyes lighting up. "You want to refine stone golems?" He had seen the stone golems in Su-Nan's base, each one possessing the fighting strength of a regular knight. Although they were only initial knights, their fearlessness and disregard for pain made them perfect weapons on the battlefield, capable of taking on hundreds of enemies. Not to mention, with 100 stone golems, coupled with the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment, Kay was absolutely confident in defeating Earl Stormwind's army. Sunan nodded gently, confirming Kay's guess. Due to the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment's recent rapid expansion, there was a shortage of Blackrock iron. As a result, Sunan had to put a stop to the production of the castrated steel golems, meaning he didn't have any extra golems to deploy in the war. It's worth mentioning that Sunan had tried to use gem soul cores for synthesis, but unfortunately, the final product couldn't replace soul crystals. After all, the most crucial aspect of soul crystals was the soul energy they contained. Gem-made soul cores, on the other hand, did not inherently contain soul energy, so no matter how they were synthesized, soul energy could not be generated. However, while castrated steel golems were not feasible, stone golems were. The materials for stone golems, including gems, granite, and silver, were easily obtainable in large quantities within a short period. As for finances, although the territory's current finances were quite tight, there were ways to address it. They could simply ask the Firefox Merchant Guild for an advance on the profits from selling potions. Mujwa would surely agree to their request, unless he was willing to see Shining Light territory defeated, causing the potion sales route to be cut off. "Excellent!" Kay exclaimed with excitement. "With the stone golems, we'll definitely win this war." At this moment, the other knights, after being explained to by Jordan, also understood the combat capabilities of stone golems, and they all looked excited. As expected of Sir Sunan, his amazing techniques truly keep appearing, one after another. With Sir Sunan on our side, Even if we face an alliance of two earls, we will not back down. Transport all the materials to Firefly Castle. I'll bring the magic energy crystal forging furnace there as well, and directly refine the golems there. Sunan smiled slightly and said, "We have to give the guests who have come from afar a bit of a surprise." As Kay issued his order, the entire Shining Light territory sprung into action. Large armies were dispatched in two directions, heading for Firefly Castle and Chelan City respectively. Sunan, carrying the magic crystal forging furnace, arrived at Firefly Castle. He designated a plot of land within the city and hastily erected a temporary puppet factory. Siaman, Corey, and Atur, his three students, were brought along as well, providing assistance with the more menial tasks. With the puppetry refining skill having advanced to level 3, crafting stone golems presented no significant challenge for Sunan. His success rate was practically 100%. In fact, the success rate for puppet crafting was generally quite high, far exceeding the success rate for potion brewing. The true difficulty with puppets lay in the cost of crafting and the subsequent maintenance expenses. However, this batch of stone golems was intended for battlefield consumption, rendering post-creation maintenance irrelevant. The only significant concern was the cost of crafting. The cost of a single stone golem amounted to roughly 43 gold coins, approximately 3 times the cost of a clay golem. The majority of the inflated price was attributed to the gems used. Higher-grade gems were required to serve as the soul cores. To be honest, if the gems required for puppetry and rune gem crafting weren't exclusively sourced from natural formations, only naturally occurring gems possessed the innate spiritual essence, Sunan would have already delved into the creation of artificial gems. To date, he had already spent upwards of 10,000 gold coins on gem purchases. If he could find a solution to the gem supply issue, he could significantly reduce expenses and allocate those gold coins to other pursuits. Once the temporary puppet factory was established, it immediately commenced full-scale operations. Sunan, temporarily putting his cultivation and other duties on hold, devoted himself wholeheartedly to crafting stone golems alongside his 3 students. After half a year of learning, Siaman, Corey, and Atur had mastered the first zero-ring spell, Master's Hand. Furthermore, under Sunan's intentional guidance, all 3 of them had begun to explore puppetry and potion brewing, acquiring a certain level of skill and knowledge. Therefore, they served as temporary assistants, performing their tasks with a surprising degree of organization. Over the course of half a month, Sunan finally crafted 100 stone golems. It's a shame time is so tight and money isn't abundant. Otherwise, I could have crafted more stone golems and synthesized even more powerful ones. They would have been even more effective on the battlefield. Sunan expressed a hint of regret. While the Firefox Trading Company had ultimately agreed to their conditions, prepaying a portion of their potion sales profits, the total sum amounted to only 5,000 gold coins. This was enough to craft 100 stone golems, but anything beyond that was beyond their means. However, 100 stone golems should be more than enough. Sunan surveyed the massive golems packed densely before him, a smile gracing his lips. Behind him, Siaman, Corey, and Atur were also beaming with excitement. They had contributed their share to this golem legion. The thought of these stone golems wreaking havoc on the battlefield filled them with an overwhelming sense of exhilaration. "All right, you've all worked hard during this time." Sunan turned towards his students and said with a gentle smile, "When we return to the base, I will allocate contribution points based on your contributions during this period." "Thank you, Master." Siaman, Corey, and Atur simultaneously broke into smiles. With additional contribution points, they could redeem even more lower-grade revitalization potions. Leaving his students to rest, Sunan headed straight towards the south gate. 5 days prior, the Earl of Storm's army had arrived near Firefly Castle and launched their assault. In the days since, Firefly Castle had engaged in numerous skirmishes with the Storm army, each battle fierce and unrelenting. Fortunately, with the Blackrock Beast assisting in defending the city and clay golems tirelessly repairing the walls, Firefly Castle had thus far evaded the threat of being overrun. As he walked, The streets were noticeably desolate. The shadow of war had cast a pall over the city, making it eerily quiet. The residents remained indoors, venturing out only rarely. Occasionally, groups of soldiers marched by, their faces grim and their steps hurried. Su Nan extended his senses and detected the presence of the stealthy dragon basking in the sun on the plaza, roughly 500 meters away. As for Amy, she was off gallivanting somewhere, as usual. Initially, Su Nan hadn't intended to bring Amy along, but the little creature was restless and insisted on tagging along. Su Nan had reluctantly given in. After all, with the little guy's abilities, even on the battlefield, he would be perfectly safe. The steel golem remained at the base. The base was his foundation and could not be compromised. He had to leave a force behind to protect it. On the city wall, Kay was overseeing the defensive arrangements. Upon spotting Su Nan, he expressed surprise. "What are you doing here?" "The Golem Legion is complete and ready for deployment." Kay's spirits soared at the news. "Excellent. Those guys on the other side have been getting cocky lately. I was just pondering how to give them a taste of their own medicine. Now that the Golem Legion is prepared, I'll lead the troops out tomorrow and crush them head-on." Su Nan glanced towards the vast enemy encampment in the distance, his eyes flashing. "No need to wait until tomorrow. We act tonight. N/O/vel/B//and.C//om. Tonight? Are you suggesting a night raid?" Kay hesitated. While a night raid could achieve surprise, not only was it difficult for the enemy to see at night, but the same was true for their own soldiers. A misstep could lead to a disastrous outcome, potentially costing them lives. Furthermore, Kay couldn't believe the Earl of Storm wouldn't have anticipated such a move. He would undoubtedly have deployed troops to keep a watchful eye on Firefly Castle's gates, ready to intercept any signs of activity. Understanding Kay's concerns, Su Nan smiled gently. Golems are constructs. By nature, they possess dark vision, so nighttime combat won't affect them in the slightest. Golems have that ability? Kay was both astonished and delighted. If that were true, it would give them a significant advantage in a nighttime battle. Even so, a nighttime operation won't achieve the element of surprise. The stone golems aren't exactly subtle in their attacks. The moment we open the gates, the enemy will know we're coming. What if we could transport the Golem Legion into the enemy camp without making a sound? Su Nan inquired with a smile. How could that be possible? Kay instinctively started to object, then suddenly realized the implication of Su Nan's words. His eyes widened in disbelief. "You have a way?" Su Nan nodded with a smile. Stone golems weren't truly sentient beings. They could be easily stored in storage rings. Of course, the space ring's capacity of 5 cubic meters could only accommodate 3 or 4 stone golems at most. It wouldn't be possible to implement the plan that way. But Su Nan had the magic cube. 100 stone golems could be easily stored in just 2 slots, leaving ample room to spare. Good, excellent. Kay practically rubbed his hands together in excitement. He couldn't blame his overreaction. If what Su Nan said was true, transporting 100 stone golems into the enemy camp without detection, followed by a sudden assault, would undoubtedly throw the enemy into disarray. They could then calmly open the gates, deploy their troops, and effortlessly crush the enemy. The entire battle could be decided in a single night. The plan couldn't have been more perfect. The real key, however, was the person executing the plan. If anyone else had claimed they could transport 100 stone golems into the enemy camp, Kay would have been skeptical. But Su Nan was different. Even though Su Nan hadn't revealed his strategy, Kay was unwavering in his belief that Su Nan had a method up his sleeve. Without further ado, with the plan finalized, they immediately sprang into action. Night had fallen. Thick clouds obscured the silver moon in the night sky. The moonlight was faint, like a soft, hazy ink wash in the pitch-black night, appearing and disappearing. About 500 to 600 meters outside the south gate of Firefly Castle, in a dugout trench, 3 scouts were lying in wait, observing the movement of the distant city gate. This Firefly Castle is like a turtle shell. We've been attacking for so many days and still haven't taken it down. It's really frustrating. Sigh. Ultimately, it's the Blackrock beasts. Those monsters are too tricky. I heard they're puppet creatures made by a wizard. TSK, a wizard, huh? I heard it's because of the wizard in Shining Light territory that the Marquis sent two earls together to make such a big fuss. Are wizards really as powerful as they say? The scout lying on the leftmost side said half-heartedly, but after a while, he noticed his two companions were not responding. He turned his head in confusion, only to find they had collapsed on the ground, motionless. No good. He felt a pang of anxiety in his heart, immediately realizing something was wrong. He was about to spring to his feet, but the next second, he felt a sharp pain in his neck and his consciousness fell into eternal darkness. Su Nan slowly retracted his palm, his face calm and devoid of any ripple. With his current physical fitness, which rivaled that of a peak knight, even without using magic, silently eliminating three scouts who weren't even knights was effortless. Carefully examining the appearance and physique of the corpses, Su Nan then whispered a spell. In the moonlight, his shape and appearance rapidly changed, in the blink of an eye becoming identical to the deceased scout. Even the clothes and weapons on his body were exactly the same. Magical disguise. This spell could alter the caster's appearance, including clothing and equipment. N/O/vel/B//and .C//OM. It's somewhat similar to transformation. The difference is that magical disguise can only change the external form, and even if transformed into a creature, it can't gain the abilities of that creature. Furthermore, human spellcasters can only become human-like, humanoid creatures, or other bipedal creatures that resemble humans, and cannot transform into other species. Once the disguise was complete, Su Nan woke up the other two scouts and used enchant humans to control them. Then, he used Silent Phantom to transform himself into an injured state. By this time, all the preparations were complete. Su Nan ordered the two scouts to carry him, rushing back to the Storm Army camp. The Storm Army camp was brightly lit. The dazzling light extended hundreds of meters outside the camp. Anyone approaching would immediately be noticed. Halt! The guards on duty immediately spotted the approaching three, ordering them to stop. We were attacked by the enemy. A brother is injured. The guard captain gestured for his men to be vigilant and walked forward to check. He quickly recognized the three as scouts sent out to monitor the city gate. Seeing the bloody wounds on the injured man, his doubts were slightly eased. Did the enemy army leave the city? No, Firefly Castle didn't open its gate. Those who attacked us should only be enemy scouts. The guard captain breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the enemy army hadn't marched out, it was fine. But just in case, he told his subordinate, Ham, go and report this to Lord Thomas. Yes, Captain. A soldier answered and hurriedly left. The guard captain turned to look at the three scouts, waved his hand and said, Go in. Carefully carry the man to the infirmary. The two scouts thanked him and carried the injured companion, rushing towards the infirmary deep within the camp. Seeing this, the guard captain couldn't help but silently admire the deep camaraderie of these three. In the center of the camp, the command tent. In the spacious tent, a group of people sat together. Earl Storm sat at the head, his face gloomy and silent. The generals below looked straight ahead, their faces impassive. After a long silence, Earl Storm finally broke the silence in a hoarse voice. It's been 5 days. Why haven't you been able to take down Firefly Castle with such a large force advantage? Give me a reasonable explanation. Several older generals twitched their eyes, secretly slandering in their hearts. Force advantage, my ass. It's true that our army is more numerous than Firefly Castle, but Firefly Castle also has the elite Blackrock cavalry. Not to mention, those 500 Blackrock beasts used for defense are more useful than 10,000 soldiers. If it weren't for the fact that we also have a considerable number of knights, let alone attacking the city, the Baron of Shining Light might have already led his men to charge out. Being able to say such a thing shows that the new Earl Storm's military skills are questionable, far inferior to his brothers. But then again, if he wasn't mediocre and easy to control, Marquis Gold Rock wouldn't have put him in power. As if realizing his gaffe, Earl Storm took a deep breath, calming his anger, and said coldly, "Kay, this cowardly fellow is hiding in the city and won't fight us head-on. Can we bypass Firefly Castle and directly attack Shining Light City to force him out?" As soon as he said this, the corners of everyone's mouths twitched even more violently. A general finally couldn't hold back and said, "My lord, if we don't take down Firefly Castle first, if Firefly Castle sends troops to attack us from the rear while we're attacking Shining Light City, the consequences will be unimaginable." Earl Storm's expression froze. He understood that he had asked a stupid question. Angry, he said, "This won't work, that won't work. You guys just give me a solution." Everyone looked at each other, their faces filled with helplessness. After a long time, an older general finally suggested, "My lord, actually, we don't need to rush. Time is on our side. As long as we wait for Earl Frost to capture Chi-Lin City and join us, then we can combine the forces of both armies and take down Firefly Castle easily." Earl Storm's face turned black. How could he not understand this logic? But if he really did that, the credit for conquering Shining Light territory would be mostly taken by Earl Frost. He was not willing to be a stepping stone for Earl Frost. Thinking of this, Earl Storm, with a dark face, rejected the proposal. "No, we must take down Firefly Castle before Earl Frost arrives." The generals exchanged glances, their faces showing a common look of helplessness. Just then, a commotion came from outside. Earl Storm was already in a bad mood, and hearing this, he was furious. He slammed his fist on the table and roared, "Who dares to break camp discipline and make noise in the middle of the night? Drag him out and hang him. My lord, something's wrong." The general who had spoken earlier suddenly jumped up. Before Earl Storm could respond, he rushed out of the tent with a solemn expression. The others also reacted and rushed out of the tent. Once they left the tent, the sound became much clearer. Everyone could hear the intermittent screams coming from the distance. "That direction is the infirmary." The general's face changed dramatically. At this moment, a messenger ran over in a panic, knelt on one knee, and said urgently, "My lord, there are monsters appearing in the infirmary." "Monsters? What kind of monsters?" Earl Storm was full of disbelief. But soon he didn't need to wonder any longer. With a deafening roar, a tent hundreds of meters away was blown into the sky. The wind scattered the smoke and dust, revealing a human-shaped creature behind, 4 to 5 meters tall, entirely made of rock. With a casual punch, it smashed several soldiers, armor and all, into a pulp. A huge pit instantly appeared on the ground. The terrifying force made the hair of many generals stand on end. Further away, many identical rock monsters were wreaking havoc, slaughtering the panicked soldiers. What was going on? Earl Storm's eyes widened in horror as he stared at the monsters. This was the core of the camp, heavily guarded by tens of thousands of troops. How did these monsters get in here? Boom! Boom! A tremendous commotion echoed out in the dead of night, traveling far and wide. Chaos rapidly spread from the infirmary district to the entire camp. Numerous soldiers were jolted awake from their sleep, hastily donning their armor. They barely stepped out of their tents when they were sent flying by enormous fists, their bodies disintegrating midair before their eyes. From the commanding officers to the common soldiers, none had anticipated the enemy appearing at the heart of their camp. Caught completely off guard, they were initially unable to mount any organized counterattack. The brutal massacre spread at an alarming rate. "Damn it, stop those monsters." The oldest commanding officer was the first to react, immediately drawing his weapon and charging towards the stone golems. Others, like awoken from a dream, joined the fray, some rushing forward to block the monsters, while others ordered their men to remain calm, attempting to quell the chaos and reorganize their forces. Just then, a deafening roar of battle erupted from the direction of the camp gate. Baron Storm nearly fainted. He didn't need to think to know that Kay had led his forces to attack. Under normal circumstances, he would have welcomed Kay's intervention. However, the camp was in utter disarray, its defenses at their weakest. With Firefly Castle attacking at this moment, it was like stabbing a knife into their back, and the consequences were unimaginable. "Damn it, Damn it! Baron Storm was both terrified and furious, stomping his feet in frustration. He racked his brains, unable to understand how the enemy had managed to infiltrate the camp. These rock monsters were so enormous. Even a blind man couldn't miss them. A bunch of useless fools. Baron Storm wanted to hang every single guard and patrol soldier, but he was not completely foolish. He knew that losing his composure at this moment would be disastrous. Taking a deep breath, Baron Storm forced himself to calm down. Under the protection of his personal guard, he retreated, putting distance between himself and the rock monsters. Then, he pulled out a grayish-black tooth from his chest. The tooth was exceptionally sharp, seemingly a fang from some ferocious beast. Its surface was covered with eerie, blood-red veins, exuding an aura of sinister strangeness. Baron Storm used a small knife to make a cut on his left thumb, then pressed the wound against the tooth. His blood flowed freely, spreading along the blood-red veins. A layer of sinister bloodlight flickered across the tooth's surface. The next moment, the tent beside the command tent suddenly shattered, and more than 10 figures surged out, instantly reaching Baron Storm's side. In the flickering firelight, it was clear that these figures were all clad in thick cloaks, obscuring their tall forms. Beneath the brim of their hoods, heavy, beastly breaths could be heard. "Kill those monsters!" Baron Storm roared. The dozen cloaked figures charged towards the surrounding rock monsters without a word. As they sped forward, their cloaks billowed, revealing 2 arms beneath, covered in thick fur and sharp claws, resembling those of a beast. Crunch! Sharp claws landed on a rock monster, instantly scraping away a large chunk of stone. More claw shadows followed in a storm, tearing the rock monster into pieces in an instant. In just one encounter, more than 10 rock monsters were torn apart by the cloaked figures, turning into piles of rubble. Not far away, Sunan, who had just arrived, saw this scene and a look of surprise crossed his face. Beast men! The primal ferocity emanating from these cloaked figures was almost impossible to mask, not to mention their obvious beastly features. They were undeniably beastmen. As expected, the Beastman plague in the Frost Province is connected to Duke Goldenrock. Sunan looked at the blood-red bone tooth in Baron Storm's hand, his eyes narrowed slightly. He wasn't surprised that Baron Storm possessed a trump card. After the incident with Owen, if Duke Goldenrock and the others didn't guard against his attempt to execute a decapitation strike, they would be incredibly foolish. Now it seemed that these beastmen were likely his trump card to counter him. However, Sunan was puzzled. These beastmen seemed to be only at the level of Junior Grand Knights, with a few reaching the level of Intermediate Grand Knights. While they might be sufficient to deal with others, they were hardly enough to handle him. Duke Goldenrock couldn't possibly be unaware of this. Or perhaps there was something else unusual about these beastmen. Standing motionless in the chaotic camp, Sunan's presence was far too conspicuous. Baron Storm and his men quickly noticed him. A commanding officer immediately demanded in a deep voice, "Which squad do you belong to, soldier?" Sunan smiled wryly, no longer concealing himself. He deactivated his spell, returning to his original form. Seeing the soldier transform into a young man in the blink of an eye, everyone present stared in astonishment. Baron Storm immediately understood, exclaiming in a stunned voice, "Sunan!" Due to his extreme shock, his tone became somewhat sharp. However, no one paid any attention to this at the moment. Everyone stared at the young man in front of them with faces full of dread. Was this the wizard from Shining Light territory? At this point, they finally understood how the monsters had appeared in the middle of their heavily guarded camp. The legendary wizard could even do this? Kill him. Returning to his senses, Baron Storm immediately issued a command with a distorted face. The bloodlight on the tooth in his hand intensified. In an instant, the surrounding beastmen abandoned their opponents without hesitation, turning to attack Sunan. Sunan's expression remained calm. He unleashed his pre-prepared magic missiles. With his growing spiritual power, the number of magic missiles he could launch had increased to 5. The 5 missiles shot through the void like lightning, striking a beast man who was charging towards him. However, to Su Nan's surprise, the missiles only left a small wound the size of an egg on the beast man. He only staggered slightly, then continued his charge as if nothing had happened. Magic resistance. Su Nan's expression instantly turned serious. Finally, he understood what they relied on. Generally, knights infected with Beastman disease would lose their ability to use martial energy, replaced by a significant increase in physical strength, resulting in increased combat power. However, these Beastmen, besides being exceptionally strong, seem to have undergone some kind of modification, greatly enhancing their resistance to magic. It was clearly a tactic aimed specifically at him, the wizard apprentice. Physical modification. Does Duke Goldenrock have a wizard apprentice behind him? N/O/vel/B//and.C//on. Su Nan's mind was filled with doubt. Based on previous events, Duke Goldenrock didn't seem to have a wizard apprentice behind him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have repeatedly underestimated Su Nan. Yet, these beastmen overturned his assumptions. However, this was no time to ponder such matters. Seeing the beastmen charging at him, Su Nan decisively activated his ice freeze necklace. High magic resistance was relative. When a spell's power was strong enough, high magic resistance would naturally become low magic resistance. In the stunned gazes of Baron Storm and his men, an intense wave of frigid air, mixed with visible frost, erupted from Su Nan as its center, spreading outwards in all directions. Crack! Crack! The dozen beastmen who were charging towards Su Nan had no time to react, instantly frozen in ice sculptures, crashing to the ground with a bang. Looking down from the sky, the area within a radius of 100 meters centered on Su Nan had turned into a frozen wasteland, with even the ground covered in a thick layer of ice. A blinding white frost had appeared out of nowhere in the vast camp. Earl Storm stared blankly at the scene before him, his mind a complete blank. His mouth hung open, unable to speak. How could this be? Didn't the Marquis say these beastmen were a natural counter to wizards, easily able to suppress Su Nan? But what was happening before him? These beastmen, whom he had placed his hopes on, couldn't even withstand a single encounter with Su Nan. This was absurd. He couldn't understand. The air was thick with chilling cold. Looking at the dozen motionless ice statues of beastmen, a satisfied smile flickered across Su Nan's eyes. Back when he had killed Ho Chi, he would have fled in terror if he had encountered these beastmen. Marquis Jean Yin had used his past self as a benchmark and considered these beastmen his trump card against him. It wasn't entirely wrong, but times had changed. Now, Su Nan had more aces up his sleeve, and Marquis Jean Yan's understanding of his strength was out of date. Taking his gaze away from the ice sculptures, Su Nan turned to Earl Storm. Meeting Su Nan's indifferent gaze, Earl Storm felt as if a bucket of cold water had been splashed on him, jolting him back to reality. "Stop him!" Earl Storm yelled in terror, ordering his guards to intercept Su Nan. He himself fled in panic. Though filled with fear, the guards couldn't disobey orders. They had no choice but to charge towards Su Nan. They were met with a torrent of searing flames. Burning hand! The blazing flames erupted from Su Nan's palm, spreading outwards in a cone shape, engulfing an area of over 100 square meters. The soldiers charging forward instantly turned into blazing torches, screaming as they fell to the ground. They rolled and writhed, gradually silencing as time passed. However, as soon as these guards were eliminated, two commanders rushed in, alerted by Earl Storm's cries for help. Looking at the aura of martial energy that enveloped their bodies, they were clearly great knights. "Such a nuisance," Su Nan muttered, directly launching two rune gems. Boom! Lightning tore through the night sky. The two great knights, who had rushed in to protect their master, were instantly reduced to charred corpses before reaching within 5 meters of Su Nan. Su Nan didn't even glance at the two corpses. He vanished in a flash, swiftly chasing after Earl Storm. Seeing this, Earl Storm's heart pounded with terror, wishing he had 2 extra legs to escape. However, he was just a beginner knight, and his speed couldn't match Su Nan, who was comparable to a peak knight. He was quickly overtaken. Whoosh! A gray ray of light, like an arrow loosed from a bow, pierced through the air, striking Earl Storm as he fled. Weakening ray. Earl Storm instantly felt a powerful sense of weakness surge through his body. His legs buckled, and he fell to the ground, sprawled in a heap. But he didn't care about the pain. He struggled to get up, turning around in terror to look at Su Nan. Don't kill me. Please forgive me. Su Nan raised an eyebrow, a hint of disdain flashing in his eyes. He had met the previous Earl Storm, a dignified and resolute great knight. Compared to him, this man was a prime example of the proverb, a tiger father, a dog's son. Without further ado, Su Nan directly used a sleep curse to silence him. He would leave it to Kay to decide how to deal with Earl Storm. Su Nan scanned his surroundings. Under the carnage of the stone golems, the Storm Legion had suffered heavy casualties. The few soldiers who stubbornly resisted finally lost their will to fight upon seeing Earl Storm captured, dropping their weapons and fleeing. Soon, Kay arrived with his men. To prevent any unforeseen incidents, Su Nan had previously assigned the Stealthy Dragon to Kay. With the Stealthy Dragon's assistance, their raid was smooth, facing almost no resistance. Seeing Su Nan safe and sound, Kay breathed a sigh of relief. Though he knew Su Nan was powerful, it was still hard not to worry about him going deep into enemy territory alone. Seeing Su Nan unscathed now, he finally felt at ease. He couldn't help but secretly marvel as he breathed a sigh of relief. To charge into the heart of the enemy camp alone and emerge unscathed, defeating the enemy single-handedly. Only Su Nan could accomplish such a feat. The followers behind him quickly noticed the ice covering the ground and gasped in unison. What is this? Look over there, there are so many ice sculptures. Did Lord Su Nan do this? Looking at the frozen area spanning hundreds of square meters, everyone subconsciously swallowed. Only Lord Su Nan could achieve such an astonishing feat. This is the new Earl Storm. He's yours to deal with. Su Nan pointed at Earl Storm lying on the ground. You've done a great job, Kay exclaimed, his face beaming with excitement. After tonight's battle, the Storm Army was no longer a threat. They could now march on the Winterfrost Legion, lifting the siege of Qilong City. As long as they defeated Earl Winterfrost, the Shining Light territory would have a chance to breathe. If they acted quickly, they could even seize the Storm and Winterfrost territories before their enemies reacted, significantly boosting their own strength. The situation had already turned in their favor. Take this man away and lock him up. Kay ordered his soldiers to drag the unconscious Earl Storm away. Then he turned to the ice sculptures nearby. What are those? Beast men, Su Nan replied concisely. Kay was startled. Why were beast men here? But he quickly realized that they were likely meant to counter Su Nan. It seemed Marquis Jin Yin had greatly underestimated Su Nan's strength. The beastmen he had prepared were completely useless. Kay thought that this was reasonable. After all, even his own brother couldn't see through Su Nan's true strength. The latter had too many secret techniques and methods up his sleeve. Now we can confirm it. Marquis Jin Yin is the one behind the spread of beast syndrome. Kay frowned. That old man is truly ruthless. He's willing to sacrifice tens of thousands of lives for his own selfish gains. Su Nan said in a deep voice, Marquis Jin Yin alone couldn't have orchestrated something this large-scale. I suspect a wizard apprentice is behind him. A wizard apprentice? Kay exclaimed in alarm that n/o/vel/b//and.c//om. With Su Nan's vivid example before them, he had a deep understanding of the power of wizard apprentices. If Marquis Jin Yin also had the support of a wizard apprentice, the situation would be extremely difficult. Right now, it's just a suspicion. I need to study these things before I can be sure. Su Nan glanced at the blood-patterned bone tooth in his hand, and then at the ice sculptures nearby. He intended to dissect these beast men overnight to see if they were indeed the work of other wizard apprentices. I still have a use for those ice sculptures. Send someone to help me transport them back to Firefly Castle. All right, I'll send someone right away. Kay nodded, his expression heavy with worry. He turned and gave the order. Temporary puppet factory. A beastman was laid out on the wide workbench, dissected. Because it was still cold, the blood was frozen, not flowing everywhere. Sunan put away his tools, removed the master's hand, and looked thoughtful. As I guessed, these people's beast bloodline factors have all awakened, and they have experienced irreversible atavism. It is indeed bestiality, and they all have traces of physical modification. It's definitely the work of a wizard apprentice. Sunan looked at the dozen or so beast men standing silently in the corner. He had studied the blood beast tooth he had taken from Earl Tempest and confirmed that it was a magic item used to control the beastmen. It was similar to the necklace he gave the cavalry regiment to control the Blackrock beasts. This kind of magic item paired with specific puppets and slaves was not difficult to make, but because it was not difficult, the creators usually added some exclusive enchanted runes, which act as a kind of encryption.n/o/vel/b//n.c//om. For those other than the creator to crack and use these magic items. The magic item creation skill must be at least 2 or 3 levels higher than the creators. Judging from the craftsmanship of the blood beast tooth, Sunan estimated that the creator's magic item creation level was not high. It should only be level 1. However, his skill level was only level 2, and he still couldn't crack it. He could only barely use the blood beast tooth to suppress the beastmen, preventing them from becoming hostile towards him. Too bad. This kind of magic item can only control specific targets and can't be used to suppress other beastmen. Sunan shook his head. This blood beast tooth could only be used to suppress the dozen or so beastmen in front of him, which was essentially useless to him. Sighing, Sunan casually dealt with these beastmen, and then destroyed the blood beast tooth. These beastmen couldn't be saved. For them, death was a release. Regardless, it's now certain that Marquis Jean Yin is indeed backed by a wizard apprentice. The beastly disaster is most likely related to that wizard apprentice. Unlike that time with Amy, Sunan could be sure that this time it was a real, living wizard apprentice. He was also the first wizard apprentice he encountered in this world. The reason he was sure it wasn't a wizard was because if it were a real wizard, solving him wouldn't require this much trouble. I wonder if it's a second-rank wizard apprentice or a third-rank wizard apprentice. Sunan looked somewhat solemn. Compared to Marquis Jean Yin, who had amassed an army and powerful forces, a wizard apprentice was even more worrisome. After all, the former wouldn't be able to kill him unless he simultaneously sent 4 or 5 legendary knights to surround him. In comparison, a wizard apprentice posed a much greater threat to him. Especially a third-rank wizard apprentice, they could already skillfully manipulate energy particles, release energy runes without relying on rune gems, and had mastered second-ring spells and super magic techniques. Even Sunan, who held many trump cards, couldn't guarantee that he could handle a third-rank wizard apprentice. To deal with a third-rank wizard apprentice, even with the frost necklace and the extreme protection ring, it's not safe. I still need to prepare more trump cards. Although he might not encounter that wizard apprentice, Sunan thought it was still safer to prepare early. It was always better to be cautious. After pondering for a moment, Sunan quickly had a plan. First, create a new magic item of the microlight tier. Different from the frost necklace, this magic item would be entirely focused on attack. Secondly, prepare new trump cards. I had some ideas before. I can try it out now. Sunan spread his palm, looked at the rune gem in his hand, his eyes glimmering slightly. The night of the attack, the Shining Light territory almost effortlessly defeated the Tempest army. The army suffered minimal casualties. Soke immediately made a decision. He left some troops behind to guard the prisoners, then led the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment and the rest of the army to Chi Lin City overnight. Sunan also took the Magic Puppet Legion with him. Earl Winterfrost didn't expect Earl Tempest to be defeated so quickly. When he received news of the Tempest army's defeat, Kay had already led his army to block his retreat. In this way, facing the fierce attack of the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment and the Stone Magic Puppet Legion, the besieged Winterfrost army, as expected, collapsed. Earl Winterfrost was captured, and the next day, he was put on the gallows with Earl Tempest. As soon as the battle report was released, the entire Jinyin province, and even the entire Starlight Kingdom, were shocked. No one expected that the combined forces of the two earldoms would be unable to take down a small barony, and they were even defeated in return, and both earls were captured and killed. And all of this dramatic turn of events happened in less than a month. Marquis Jin Yin, who was stationed in Mingguang City, hadn't even had time to react before the Shining Light territory, with lightning speed, wiped out the remaining garrison forces of the Tempest territory and Winter Frost territory, incorporated the two territories into their own, and then pressed on to attack other territories. In shock, Marquis Jin Yin had no choice but to lead his army back and personally lead the allied forces to resist the attack of the Shining Light territory. The two sides thus engaged in a fierce war. After witnessing the powerful combat capabilities of the stone magic puppets, Kay did not hesitate to invest all the gold coins he had looted from the Tempest territory and Winter Frost territory into building the Magic Puppet Legion. One after another, stone magic puppets stepped out of the puppet factory and were then immediately sent into battle. Originally, Su Nan wanted to make another sneak attack, but with the precedent of Earl Tempest, Marquis Jin Yin had already taken precautions, and all those entering and leaving the camp had to undergo strict inspections. Su Nan even discovered magic items that could detect magic. He had no choice but to abandon the plan. Although the infiltration failed, the stone magic puppets still played a remarkable role on the front line. With the Magic Puppet Legion and the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment, the Shining Light territory finally had the strength to fight the Jin Yin allied forces on the front line. The war continued until the month of Frostfall. Only when the first snow fell did both sides tacitly cease fire. The snow covered the land. Marching at this time would put a huge strain on the logistics, even for the Shining Light territory, which had clay magic puppet logistics troops. They could only call a truce. By this time, Jinyin province had undergone a dramatic change compared to 5 months ago. Apart from the Shining Light territory, the other two baronies and the Viscount territory had already been destroyed by the Jinyin allied forces. The vast Jinyin province now had only two major forces, the Shining Light territory and the Jinyin allied forces. The territory of the Shining Light territory, which had started with only the Shining Light territory, had now expanded to include the Shining Light territory, the Tempest territory, and the Winter Frost territory, covering almost half of Jinyin province. It was a situation where they were dividing the world in half with Marquis Jin Yin. Such a development truly stunned many nobles. No one had expected that Marquis Jin Yin, who had proudly raised the banner of rebellion, had not even left his own province before he was defeated, losing almost half of his territory. And all this was done by a mere barony. The name of the Shining Light territory echoed throughout the Starlight Kingdom, and Su Nan's name gradually spread among some secretive circles. Starlight Calendar 1252, the month of Winter Song, January. The snow fell extra heavily today. It was already the end of the month, and the snow showed no signs of thawing. But this was good news for the Shining Light territory, as it gave them more time to recuperate. The expansion of territory meant an increase in taxes and population, and it also provided a broader base for expanding their military capabilities. As soon as the war was over, Kay began to integrate the territory's administration and launched a massive recruitment campaign within the territory, intending to expand his military forces during the winter to prepare for the upcoming spring battle. At the same time, a new round of wizard aptitude testing began. With the expansion of territory and the surge in population, the scale of the testing was also much larger this time. But the consequence was that the number of children who would eventually possess wizard aptitude was expected to increase significantly. Throughout the month of Winter Song, the entire Shining Light territory was running at full speed. Su Nan was no exception. He was immersed in various tedious manufacturing tasks. After integrating the new territory, the Shining Light territory suddenly had a large number of knights. The result was a sharp increase in the demand for enchanted weapons. Su Nan had to devote more time to making enchanted weapons. Besides that, the scale of the Blackrock Cavalry Regiment was also rapidly expanding. With enough knights, Kay made a decision to make the Black Rock Cavalry Regiment into a full-fledged knight army. He ordered that only knights could join the Black Rock Cavalry Regiment in the future. As for the existing probationary knights in the regiment, they were given priority in being supplied with dragonblood fruit in order to accelerate their breakthrough to becoming knights. According to Kay, before the snow melted, he wanted to create a real knight army and completely conquer Marquis Jean Yan's territory. Thanks to this, Sunan had another job, refining Blackrock beasts. The current output of the Blackrock mine area was no longer enough to meet the growing demand for Blackrock beasts, and he had to find other suitable steel to replace it. I feel like I'm turning into a tool man. Sunan sighed slightly. He could only comfort himself that the territory's growth was also good for him, and he would have more gold coins to buy materials. Especially after becoming a third-rank wizard apprentice, there would be more places where he would need to spend money. And this situation was only temporary. Once Yeman and the others grew up and took over the work of making potions and refining Blackrock beasts, he would be much more relaxed. Busy as he was, Sunan never slacked off in his cultivation. By the month of revival, February, his spiritual power had grown to 27.45. At the same time, the last ingredient for the evil illusion potion was finally collected. Without delay, Sunan immediately set about making the evil illusion potion. His potion-making skill was level 4, which was enough to make second-order potions. Despite this, Sunan still failed twice, and it was only on the third attempt that he successfully made the evil illusion potion. Success! Looking at the finished potion in his hand, Sunan breathed a sigh of relief. The amount of bloody mandala he got from Shizhong City was only enough to make 3 evil illusion potions. If he had failed a third time, he would have suffered a huge loss. Fortunately, his luck hadn't been that bad. It was indeed the right decision to upgrade the potion-making skill to level 4 before making the evil illusion potion. The difficulty of a second-order potion is significantly higher than that of a first-order potion. Taking a deep breath, Sunan turned his attention back to the potion. The transparent, narrow-neck potion vial contained a violet liquid, within which were scattered shimmering light spots, shining with a mesmerizing beauty under the glow of the magic stone lamp. Just by its appearance, it was hard to guess that such a beautiful potion would have the malicious-sounding words evil illusion in its name. Too bad. If I could have made 2 evil illusion potions and combined them, I might have been able to directly break through 30 points of spiritual power. But now, there's only 1. I guess it's not enough. Sunan was slightly regretful, but he quickly regained his composure. Even if he couldn't break through 30 points of spiritual power after taking this evil illusion potion, it wouldn't be far off. At most, he would only need to meditate for another month or 2, and he would definitely be able to become a third-rank wizard apprentice. He took a magic stone and silver from his space ring. Sunan drew an energy-gathering magic array in the meditation chamber. He then activated the magic array, filling the room with large amounts of energy particles. Only then did he sit cross-legged on the ground, took a deep breath, calmed his mind, gently removed the cork, and drank the potion in one gulp. The slightly cool potion flowed into his stomach, turning into a chilly breath that quickly spread throughout his body. Sunan leaned back and lay on the ground, relaxing his mind and limbs. About 10 seconds later, his body suddenly tensed and then began to violently convulse. Visibly, the veins on his exposed hands and feet bulged, twisting and convulsing like earthworms. His skin flushed abnormally, and large patches of sweat oozed out, quickly soaking his clothes. If a wizard were present at this moment and used spiritual power to scan him, they would see a countless number of energy particles pouring in from all sides like a tide, almost completely enveloping Sunan, making him look like a colorful human cocoon. Every second, countless energy particles entered his body through his pores. Sunan gritted his teeth, enduring the tidal wave of pain surging through his body. Vaguely, he seemed to feel a cold air slowly spreading throughout the room. Click! A faint sound of footsteps seemed to come from his ears. Sunan struggled to turn his head, and was shocked to find a group of grotesque and terrifying monsters in the room at some point. They looked like human-shaped creatures made of rotting flesh. Sticky mud slid down their skin, dripping onto the floor with a sizzling sound, corroding small holes in the floorboards. Even more terrifying was the gaping mouth full of sharp teeth in the middle of their rotting bodies. He could faintly see remnants of flesh between the teeth. These monsters growled, squirmed, and slowly approached Su Nan with a malevolent intent. Su Nan lay on the ground, his whole body stiff and unable to move. He could only watch helplessly as the monsters slowly approached and then used their sharp teeth to tear at his flesh. The intense pain hit his nerves like a tidal wave, wave after wave, seemingly endless, until his whole body went numb with pain, losing all sensation. In this way, Su Nan watched helplessly as he was torn apart, slowly turning into minced meat and bones, entering the monsters' mouths. In the end, only a head remained, witnessing the complete process of his dismemberment. Sizzle. With a soft sound, everything disappeared. The monsters, the flesh, and the slime all vanished. The room returned to calm. Su Nan lay on the ground, drenched in sweat, as if he had just been pulled out of the water. Damn it, the side effects are too strong. Su Nan couldn't help but curse. He finally understood how the evil illusion in the name of the evil illusion potion came about. Even though his subconscious understood that it was just an illusion, it was still very uncomfortable to watch himself being dismembered. The pain during the process was also real. Anyone with slightly weaker willpower would have probably collapsed. Evil illusion, the name lives up to its reputation. It took a while before Su Nan recovered some of his spirit. He sat up. As he moved, he immediately felt a noticeable difference. His spirit, while still somewhat sluggish, was significantly more active than before. The connection with the ambient energy particles seemed tighter as well. Overjoyed, Su Nan quickly opened his panel. Su Nan, Arnest, Human Male. Spirit 29.51/Constitution 20.15. Skills. Star Ring Meditation Method LV10. 18924/3000000. Potion Making LV4. 1824/10,000. Creature Modification LV2. 1821/3000. Puppetry Refining LV3. 2712/6000. Magical Item Manufacturing LV2. 1532/3000. Not bad. My spirit increased by 2.06. A satisfied smile appeared on Su Nan's face. It was all worth the suffering he endured. The malicious illusion potion, as expected of a second-rank potion, had a nasty side effect, but its effect was truly remarkable. If he had trained the traditional way, it would have taken him at least 7 to 8 months to achieve this level of growth. With this, I just need another 0.49 in spirit to become a third-rank wizard apprentice. It'll only take 2 months. The thought of becoming a third-rank wizard apprentice in 2 months made Su Nan's heart swell with joy. My constitution has also broken through 20, reaching the peak of a knight's limit. The constitution of a peak knight is between 17 and 20. Su Nan was now only a step away from a peak knight in terms of martial energy and combat techniques. However, he was confident that even without using magic or magical items, relying solely on his physical fitness and energy particle manipulation skills, he could easily defeat any knight. As for great knights, their constitution is usually above 30. It would be difficult to defeat them without the aid of magic or magical items. After cleaning his body and clothes with energy particles, Su Nan stretched and stepped out of the meditation chamber. As soon as he got outside, Su Nan's expression shifted as he looked towards the courtyard in front. Space distorted, and the massive body of the stealthy dragon materialized out of thin air. Hiss! The stealthy dragon hissed softly. Perfect timing. It's been 5 days since the last blood transfusion. Time for another round. Su Nan led the stealthy dragon towards the laboratory. The concentration of the dragon lizard bloodline in the stealthy dragon's body now exceeded 80%. As the bloodline concentration increased, its appearance gradually took on more dragon-like features. For example, 2 protrusions had grown on its head. A hook had formed at the end of its tail. The breath it exhaled now carried a noticeable heat, sometimes even sparking. It's only a dragon-lizard bloodline, yet it exhibits more dragon-like features than some subdragons. Is it an inherent talent, or is it due to its transformation into a magical companion? This question had been circling in Su Nan's mind for a long time. If the stealthy dragon wasn't his magical companion, and if its abilities weren't reliable, he would have wanted to dissect it to investigate the cause. The stealthy dragon now possesses the strength of a near-legendary knight. After its bloodline advancement, it'll likely reach at least the level of a second-ring legendary knight. A second-ring legendary knight was strong enough to clash head-on with a third-rank wizard apprentice. After completing the blood transfusion in the lab, Su Nan cast a sleep curse on the stealthy dragon to help it sleep better. Then he turned and left. The last mile is the hardest. The remaining 20% of the stealthy dragon's bloodline was the most difficult to raise. Not to mention the crucial step of transforming from quantitative change to qualitative change. Su Nan estimated that it would take at least another year to advance the stealthy dragon's bloodline to subdragon with only blood transfusions. Of course, there were ways to accelerate the bloodline concentration. The best method was to fuse with a higher-rank bloodline, such as the blood of a subdragon. Dragon blood was beyond Su Nan's reach. Not to mention whether dragons still existed on the current Starlight continent. Even if they did, Su Nan didn't have the strength to draw blood from them. That would be suicidal. Dragons are known for their natural high magic resistance. Adult dragons can nullify all spells below the third ring. Unofficial wizards don't even qualify to tickle them. Even juvenile dragons were beyond Su Nan's current capabilities. The extreme protection ring probably wouldn't withstand 2 or 3 dragon breaths. So, dragon blood was out of the question. However, subdragon blood was something he could try to find. As far as he remembered, there were quite a few subdragons on the Starlight continent, such as various land-walking dragons, storm dragon beasts, dragon antelopes, fairy dragons, and thorny-back wingless dragons. During the wizard's heyday, dragon antelopes were often captured and trained as mounts by high-level legendary knights. Perhaps somewhere on the Starlight continent, dragon antelopes still existed. I'll ask the Firefox Trading Company to keep an eye out for information on this matter. As Su Nan pondered, he had already reached the workshop. He pushed aside his thoughts and went to the workbench. With a wave of his hand, more than 20 magical items appeared on the spacious table. After realizing that he might face a third-rank wizard apprentice in the future, Su Nan decided to craft a completely offensive shimmer-grade magical item. After much deliberation, he finally settled on a negative energy-based magical item. Over the past few days, he had already crafted more than 20 alchemy-grade magical items. Based on his previous experience, with 1 or 2 more items, he would reach the synthesis limit. Sure enough, after crafting a new magical item and putting it in the magic cube, a wizard weapon appeared on the synthesis interface. Seeing this, Su Nan took out the excess magical items and immediately started synthesizing. Doom Ring, Shimmer/Low Magic Item. Activates to release Doom Claw, dealing negative energy damage to the designated target. Requires recharging after each use. N/O/vel/B//in.C///OM. This time, Su Nan chose a ring, as always, for ease of carrying. He looked at the Doom Ring on his finger, hesitated for a moment, but ultimately abandoned the idea of testing its power with the steel golem. Unlike the Ice Binding Necklace, which was a large-scale attack, and Su Nan had kept a safe distance, the steel golem didn't suffer much damage. But the Doom Ring was a single-target attack, and it was close range. Su Nan estimated that the steel golem probably wouldn't be able to withstand the power of the Doom Claw. He didn't want to destroy his only steel golem during testing. This thing consumed his only soul crystal. I can only test its actual power in combat. Thinking of the steel golem, Su Nan shook his head silently. While he had considered building a neutered version of the steel golem before, due to the expansion of his military and the shortage of steel, he had not been able to put it into action. The situation was still the same. The Blackstone Mine area's production was not enough to support the military expansion of Shining Light territory. He had to buy a large amount from the Firefox Trading Company to barely make up for the shortfall. The plan to mass-produce the neutered version of the steel golem was clearly not feasible in the short term. The gemstone soul core synthesis failed. I still have to find a way to acquire the technology for manufacturing soul crystals. Su Nan thought silently. Over the past 2 years, the Firefox Trading Company had been collecting various wizard texts for him, but only a few were truly useful and practical. They merely enriched his knowledge base. The Firefox Trading Company's sphere of influence only covers the Thornflower Duchy and the Starlit Duchy, leaving other countries almost untouched. Perhaps I should find a second partner in another country to expand the search scope. As he left the workshop, Su Nan headed straight for the library. This was a space he had specially designated for storing wizard texts, covering an area of over 1,000 square meters. However, only 4 or 5 bookshelves were filled, making the space seem somewhat empty. But Su Nan believed that one day, the entire library would be filled with books. Entering the library, Su Nan went to one of the bookshelves and reached out to take a book. On the violet hardback cover were 4 large characters, Magic Emblem Core. This book was actually left behind by Master Amy. When he first acquired it, Su Nan thought it was related to knowledge about magical items. However, after reading it, he discovered that it was actually a knowledge of magic tattoos. Like energy runes, magic tattoos are also a branch of enchantment. It allows specific spells to be drawn on the human body in the shape of tattoos. During combat, by injecting a small amount of spiritual power, it can be instantly activated. This is equivalent to storing a spell on the human body that can be cast without chanting. For wizard apprentices who haven't mastered spellcasting, this is a very practical skill. Drawing a few defensive magic tattoos on your body will provide additional protection in combat. However, magic tattoos are not without flaws. One is that magic tattoos take up a significant area and cannot be covered by hair. Even after shaving all the hair on your body, you can only draw a maximum of 5 to 6 magic tattoos. It's fine if it's covered by clothing, but if it's on exposed areas like the arms, head, and neck, the magic tattoos are easily visible to the opponent, allowing them to prepare beforehand. Another flaw is that magic tattoos are extremely difficult to draw, with a prerequisite of level 3, magical item manufacturing. The vast majority of wizard apprentices cannot meet this requirement. Su Nan had considered drawing magic tattoos before, but his skill level wasn't high enough, so he had to give up. As for now, it was even less relevant. After becoming a 3rd-rank wizard apprentice, he could train super magic technique. Once he mastered spellcasting, the value of magic tattoos would significantly decrease. Besides, magic tattoos have higher-level versions like rune engravings and alchemy engravings. Compared to magic tattoos, he preferred rune engravings and alchemy engravings, which had stronger effects. Putting his thoughts aside, Su Nan looked at the book in his hand. The author of the book was Lupert Bevan, a formal wizard. Magic Emblem Core was a product of his research, a culmination of magic tattoo applications. The principle, in simple terms, is to combine multiple magic tattoos corresponding to multiple spells, using the magic tattoo as a medium to integrate the effects of various spells, thereby forming a new, more powerful spell effect. The first half of the book describes how Lupert Bevan researched and created the Magic Emblem Core, as well as its principles and structure. The latter half explains the Magic Emblem Core he developed called Flow Silver. According to the book, when activated, Flow Silver releases a metallic fluid with highly versatile properties. Depending on the changing form, it can be used for both defense and offense, making it a versatile Magic Emblem Core suitable for both attack and defense. Its power is said to be no less than the innate abilities of a formal wizard. However, Su Nan was skeptical about this statement. The innate abilities of formal wizards are often their ultimate moves and trump cards, with immense power. Su Nan didn't believe that a Magic Emblem Core could reach that level. But judging from the content of the book, even if there was some exaggeration, it wouldn't be too much. This Magic Emblem Core called Flow Silver, even if it had only half the power of a wizard's innate abilities, would be an incredibly powerful ability for a wizard apprentice. When he first saw this, Su Nan was very tempted. But after seeing the refining method for the magic emblem core, he quelled his enthusiasm. Magic emblem cores are essentially a special kind of magical item, requiring the refiner to possess certain magical item manufacturing skills. The book didn't explicitly state the specific skill level, but it was obvious that it must be higher than the prerequisite for magic tattoos. That is, magical item manufacturing must be at least level 4. Su Nan's magical item manufacturing was only level 2, half the experience needed to reach level 3. Secondly, refining flow silver requires a large amount of materials. The main materials include 89 metals, more than 2/3 of which are rare magic metals, such as mithril, meteor iron, and so on. Su Nan estimated that many of these metals could no longer be found on the current Starlight continent. He could only try to synthesize substitutes using the magic cube. This would undoubtedly be a long and time-consuming process. Finally, fusing with a magic emblem core would place an enormous burden on the fusion subject's body. Therefore, the fusion subject must possess both the spirit level of a third-rank wizard apprentice and the constitution level of a junior great knight. That is, both spirit and constitution must reach 30 or above. The requirements were quite demanding. Right now, I'm only short of spirit to meet the standard, but the rest of my skills, materials, and constitution are still far behind. Su Nan was a little disappointed. If he could refine and fuse with a magic emblem core, even facing a third-rank wizard apprentice wouldn't scare him. However, even though he couldn't refine it now, he could start making preparations. For example, the 89 metals could be collected now, or he could research substitutes. After putting the book back in its place, Su Nan grabbed a few books he hadn't read yet and put them in his space ring. Then he left the library. After a flurry of activities, it was already getting late. The evening glow stretched across half the sky like rays, and the cirrus clouds, like flames, transitioned from a bright gold line on the horizon to a bluish purple at the top, then gradually faded to deep blue, turning into a gloomy shadow towards the east. It looks like there will be good weather tomorrow. Su Nan stretched his body, feeling that the discomfort left by the malicious illusion had subsided, and he headed for the meditation chamber, ready to continue his daily routine. He was still using super ability potions and divine blood crystals to aid his meditation. However, as his spiritual power increased, the effects of both were gradually declining. The super ability potion was easy to solve. After becoming a third-rank wizard apprentice, he would be able to handle third-rank potions, and he could synthesize higher-level potions then. However, the divine blood crystal was more troublesome. To upgrade the divine blood crystal, he needed to acquire more raw materials. However, this thing was a treasure of the Starfire sect, and they wouldn't be so kind as to give it to him. Su Nan guessed that the Starfire sect members should have discovered his involvement in the Stone Bell City incident by now. They were probably plotting how to get the divine blood crystal back. But even if they don't come looking for me, I'll eventually seek them out for revenge.